Good evening. We call the special meeting for the Ames City Council for February 3rd to order. Evening, council, staff. And we're going to get started on or continue our budget presentation. Tonight, we're going to start with Transit and Barb Neal and her team. And we'll start on page 140. Barb?
So good evening, Mayor and Council. So I'm pleased to be presenting the SIRIDE budget tonight. It does start on page 140 and goes through page 147, I believe. So I'd like to start first by taking a moment to introduce the people that I have with me. Some of them were here for the CIP meeting. I have Chris Crippen, Assistant Director of Operations, James Rundell, Assistant Director of Fleet and Facility, and then I have Rob Jennings, who's our budget analyst. I should also mention this budget was approved by the Transit Board in the December Transit Board meeting. So the challenges of 2020 have certainly continued into 21 and 22. And we're gradually seeing more of our passengers return to riding the bus. This next budget year, we'll continue to work on rebuilding our large ridership base and adjusting to a new normal, while supporting the goal of connecting people to their community with safe and efficient transportation that exceeds customers' expectations. Our budget also, again, supports the goal of reducing carbon emissions and providing a sustainable community in which to live. Maintaining our large ridership base has always been a focus of our work. About $1.4 million of federal funding is tied to our high ridership and our operational efficiencies. Our ability to outperform transit agencies that serve much larger communities. Over the last 2 years, ridership patterns have shifted significantly due to changes in work patterns, people working from home, and then educational offerings, more virtual classes. These fluctuations, though, are not unique to SIRIDE. These are things that are seen nationwide by transit systems. Currently, our ridership is about 65 to 70% of our pre-pandemic levels. And while ridership is projected to increase this year, we still foresee ridership levels below normal. We continue to closely monitor ridership demands and patterns and adjust our services to the shifting kind of needs of the community. Historically, SIRIDE's ridership has mirrored what is happening at Iowa State. So as ISU enrollment has declined, so has our ridership. Currently, about 93% of our riders are Iowa State students, and we're projecting ridership next year to be approximately 3.5 million passengers. So listed here on this next slide are our budget, our projected revenues for the 22-23 budget year. SIRIDE was fortunate to receive a timely influx of one-time federal funding. By using that funding really judiciously and really taking a thorough and thoughtful approach, we were able to spread the funding over 2 years, helping the 21-22 budget year with no increase to the local funding partners, and then a slight increase this year to the City of Ames and ISU administration. Our 22-23 budget represents an overall increase of 3% from last year's budget request. For the city, we are requesting an additional $40,754. The transit tax rate is 59.8 cents per thousand, which is down 1 cent from last year, or a reduction of 1.67%. Continuing to adjust to our new normal will be important this next budget year for us. SIRIDE administration and the Transit Board will work on right-sizing the system to really ensure that SIRIDE continues to deliver the services that the community relies upon within the financial realities facing our local funding partners. During the CIP presentation, I talked about our planned capital purchases over the next 5 years. I also discussed how successful SIRIDE is at securing state and federal grants, which allows us to keep our system in that state of good repair, but it also lowers the financial commitment to local funding partners. So I wanted to highlight a capital improvement project that we're working on this year that has changed due to an additional grant award. So we will be replacing 12 40-foot diesel buses with newer vehicles that are less expensive to operate and have significantly cleaner emissions. We were able to leverage grant money to replace 8 of these vehicles using a Volkswagen settlement grant. which lowered the local match for those 8 vehicles to 3% for the funding partners.
Barb, how many of those vehicles that you are replacing were used buses that we had acquired from elsewhere?
James is with me, but I don't believe, are any of them? I don't believe any of them are.
This first set, no.
I can find out. Honestly, I don't know. We have a whole system of when buses are replaced based on how they, not only the mileage, but how are they operating. You know, some buses are, but I believe these 12 are not. When I talked about the budget, I also talked about technology and how technology will continue to be critical this budget year. It'll really help ensure that our system is as efficient and responsive as it can be to the changing needs of our riders. We'll be using the APC data really to become more agile at matching services to the changing needs of the community. And as ridership begins to stabilize and patterns start to emerge, we'll be using the same data to help us gather information for future service planning. I think my mother has a knack for calling when I'm presenting in front of you. Just
You can talk to her.
She's probably
Sorry.
watching you. She's watching the streaming.
That's right. Don't say that. The next item we have is the transit fixed route. So this, I think, is on page 144 if you are following along. So fixed route expenditures are increasing by 3.1% next year, largely due to wages and benefits. Hiring and training is a significant number of part-time drivers has really been an ongoing challenge for us at SciRide. It's led to increases in overtime and training costs. I mean, as I know you all are probably aware, the job market is highly competitive, and we've been working hard to attract more applicants through a combination of advertising, community outreach, and increasing our hiring bonus. Nonetheless, budget shortfalls will likely prove challenging for the 22-23 budget year. I will say nationwide, transit agencies are reporting difficulty recruiting enough employees, and a lot of them are forcing overtime and being required to cut services to their customers. I'm proud to say that we have not had to resort to forced overtime or service cuts, and this is really a statement of the employees and their commitment to SciRide. So I just want to take a moment and say that I am truly grateful for what they've done. They've carried us through the pandemic. They continue to work every day on the front lines and behind the scenes, providing the services that our community really relies upon. Our budget also includes an investment in those employees in training and development, really ensuring that employees at all levels in the organization understand our mission and the importance of delivering the highest level of customer service. Focusing on customer service and really the rider experience will be essential to rebuilding that ridership base. So SciRide is a benchmark organization in the transit world. With strong employee development, we can continue to set the high standards for others to follow. Our next section is, Dial-A-Ride, and it's on page 146. So for people who are unable to use our fixed route services, we do offer paratransit service known as Dial-A-Ride. Working with HRDA, Dial-A-Ride really closes that transportation gap for seniors or people with persons with disabilities. Dial-A-Ride allows members in the community to who may not otherwise be able to leave their home. It also allows members to remain in their homes. So we've worked in coordination with HRDA to really raise awareness of our Dial-A-Ride services this last year, and we've shifted eligible users onto our services. Ridership on this service was trending downward prior to the pandemic, but based on current ridership levels, we are anticipating ridership to be restored to our 2015-16 levels. Because we do contract this as a service to HRDA, SciRide's operating expenses for Dial-A-Ride are 80% federally funded. So shifting ridership to our service really ensures the most economical cost to the customer as well as to the Ames community. So one of SciRide's goals is to connect people to the community, really to opportunities, to education, to the things that are important in their lives. And for many, SciRide is a lifeline. Having access to frequent, reliable, and affordable transportation is really key to closing that transportation gap. Currently, we offer discounted fares and passes to help reduce the financial burden of transportation on K through 12 students, individuals with disabilities, seniors, and those on Medicare and Medicaid. We will, this next budget year, continue to work on developing relationships with other community partners like Ames Community School District and DMAC to look at access to opportunity and make sure we're working with them to ensure transportation isn't a barrier for education for their constituents as well. Equity and access will always play a role in service delivery, in my opinion, with SciRide. So as we plan for service in the future, we really want to be thoughtful about the impacts that we may have on those vulnerable communities. So when we consider changes, we will look to input from the public to kind of help drive those decision-making processes. Okay, so this year we are focusing on rebuilding that large ridership base. We know we need to continue to fine-tune our services. We need to ensure long-term financial stability for our funding partners. And we need to make sure any changes we make really maintain access to everybody. So we know challenges are ahead, but I'm confident we'll continue to deliver safe, dependable service, really that has made us one of the best in the nation. I think if we focus on connecting people, streamlining processes, and delivering excellence, we will continue to meet the needs of a community as diverse and dynamic as Ames. Thank you. That's what I got.
We're waiting for an encore here. I think.
Thank you for focusing on access and equity. I think that's really difficult with the number of student riders that we have. The other members of the community could easily be left aside in this, and I think it's really important that, if anything, we continue to improve the service to the other segments of the community. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I want to come back. I really found the CIP discussion very interesting. And I'd like to touch base on the question of the electric buses, particularly with respect to the batteries, because that, I think, will impact your operating budget at some point as well. So have you guys thought through further how we're going to pay for these replacement batteries?
That's an excellent question, and I do need to just clarify a little bit about what I said in the CIP. So I've done it, James and I and Rob have done a little research since I was here talking about it, and the price of the battery is typically about $400,000, like I said. However, we are getting buses from the manufacturer that we're getting the buses from. We have negotiated, and James, feel free to come up or jump in, for $200,000, and they have given us a guarantee that the buses will have at least 80% battery life for the next 6 years. So it's a little bit, it's not, I mean, it's still 200,000 is 200,000. Don't misrepresent that. But I just want to make clarity because I did say 400,000. And I think I should also talk a little bit about how just because a battery is at 80% doesn't necessarily mean we can't continue to run the bus. It's kind of how we shift buses now. So we get a new bus, we put it out a lot to get mileage on it. As it gets older and things don't work as well, or maybe it's not as efficient or not as energy efficient, then we don't put it out as long. So we can run buses with less than 80% capacity. We would just have to, it would increase probably operating costs a little bit just because you would have to switch the bus out more frequently like that. So that's one part of it. I think the other question was, have we thought through the funding of these batteries? We've had discussions at SciRide about it, and the board was fortunate because of one-time federal funding that we used to pay wages and benefits. We were able to put some additional money in the capital plan for battery electric buses. So there is money in there if we would need to replace the batteries. But I also think in future grants, we could look at replacement of batteries as part of the grant opportunity, as I kind of think through that a little bit more and talk to our grant writer that, you know, maybe you don't just request the price of the bus, you request the replacement of the battery during that. And again, we're getting the 2 buses this summer, and really it was designed to be a trial to see how it works in our area and what is best for SciRide. I don't know, James, or did you have anything else to add?
No, I mean, that's super encouraging. I mean, it's, I thought it was 400,000 or 450, and now it's 200,000. So that's a much smaller bite.
Mm-hmm.
And if there are in fact grants that we can write for those batteries to help replace that. It just seemed like there was some sticker shock I had with the
Yeah.
batteries. And my fear was just if we receive the buses about the same time, I don't know, like in my house, when I replace 4 light bulbs, they all go out at the same time, right? And so my fear is that the life of the batteries, unless it was staggered, you'd find yourself with a big hurdle periodically. And so budgeting for that would just present some need for some,
Right.
some foresight to make sure that was there. And then just 2 other things just as comments. So I love the MyRide app. So what's happened in SciRide technology wise has really changed. When I started riding SciRide, there were horses out in front. I'm just kidding. There weren't horses.
I know.
But the technology has really rapidly improved. And so there's that piece. But I also want to make sure that please pass on to your staff just our appreciation for the kindness and grace that your dispatchers and your drivers continue to show. So occasionally I take a week and I leave my car at home and I'm going to ride SciRide. And I don't announce that I'm on the bus. I'm a city council member. I just watch. And I continue to be very impressed with the way in which the drivers and sometimes people who ride the bus, they have challenges. They don't communicate well. They're just challenging people, cards on the table. And our bus drivers just continue to amaze me at just the thoughtfulness and the kindness above and beyond service. And I'm just so proud of them. And I try to commend them when I leave the bus that they're really representing our community well. Same thing with dispatchers. I've heard some conversations with dispatchers. So the training you're doing, I just think is outstanding. And it's just good for you to hear. We're not focusing necessarily all on dollars and cents, but there's a human component that you just need to hear some affirmation on. Thanks.
I think that's wonderful. Thank you. I mean, they really have carried us through all of this, and we couldn't do it without them. So thank you.
I just wanted to ask a question about students as drivers. Do you still have a program where students with the appropriate licenses are driving for you? And are those numbers about the same as in the past, or are they lower as are other numbers?
That's an excellent question. So yes, we do have student drivers. So we have, we train people to drive the bus. We train you to get your CDL. We actually, because of that hiring bonus, help pay for that CDL. Most people who come to us do not have a CDL. So when you start at SciRide, you can work anywhere from about 15 hours a week to about 38. So it's kind of a varied. And if you're a student, we work around your schedule. I'll tell you where we're really struggling is that 3/4 time. So anybody above about 30, really having a hard time getting those people to come back into the labor market for us anyway. I will say that we've had a lot of success recently with students. Chris is here. She can probably speak to that too as well. But most of the students, because ISU is their number one priority. And I get that, they're working about 15, 18 hours a week. So what that means is you have to hire a lot more students to cover the same number of open shifts. But we have always been successful with students. I think it's a good job. I think it helps them grow their leadership skills. I think it helps them balance school, work kind of stuff. I think that's an excellent question. Thank you.
Sure.
I think there's a real credit to the having Iowa State as well as student representation and city representation on the board is that Iowa State years ago, Warren Madden saw to it that students would get priority scheduling. If they worked for SciRide, they would get a perk. And I don't know if that still continues or not, but it just demonstrates how Iowa State really tries to help, make it easier for students to drive for SciRide too. So it's an ongoing great partnership between the city and Iowa State and student government too.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. I didn't mention that. That is one of the things that prior transit board, that a few of you were on the transit board during that time, they fought to get priority scheduling. So if you're a student at Iowa State, you can, and you work for SciRide, you can schedule before other students, which is pretty important when you're taking your more undergrad class, especially as a sophomore, things like that. We every once in a while get a freshman. We don't get very many freshmen because it's a big adjustment just to go into college. So, but yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Easy to forget those little things.
Other questions? Barb, I know can you go back to your first slide just for a second on the ridership?
we go back to ridership. We might have to exit it to be able to. There's a lot of graphics, so it's kind of graphic heavy. So
I know you touched on this, but we were at like, or you were at like 6.6, almost 7 million riders. And can you talk a little bit about this huge decline? And we understand why. And we get funding from the federal government in part because of our high ridership. Is this trend the same across the nation? So in other words, if everyone is down, then the funding really shouldn't be fluctuating that much because everyone's down. But if others are going up and we're staying down long term, that could potentially hurt us, right? Because I think I heard you say $1.4 million comes from the federal government because of our high ridership.
Mhm.
So if that doesn't go back to high ridership, ultimately, just thinking down the road, there's going to be a need for more funding or cuts or whatever. So and I'm sure you're thinking about it. I'm sure staff's thinking about it. What are you seeing nationally? And I'm quite shocked. We're back in person and we're almost half the ridership. So it's just surprising to me that there's such a decline, even though they had in-person classes at Iowa State. So can you just share your thoughts on that and what you're seeing nationally?
So, well, that is something obviously we've asked ourselves and we're working on, and that's why I think rebuilding that ridership is really key. I will say that when we carried 6.7 million, that was the highest enrollment at Iowa State. I don't think Iowa State believes they'll have that kind of enrollment anymore either. And honestly, SciRide was growing probably a little bit too fast for that. I mean, we were buying a lot of used buses. We were having to possibly look for a new facility. We couldn't house everything. We still can't house everything in-house right now, but at least it's can all be housed at least on our property. So I do nationwide, what we're seeing between the 65-70% is pretty typical. We've been fortunate so that high ridership that I talked about, that's called Small Transit Intensive Cities funding. So it's called STIC funding. So they have waived ridership for the 2021 year because of COVID, and they know it had a huge impact on universities. University towns tend to get that STIC funding on all. There's 6 categories. SciRide always typically gets 5 of those categories. We'll never get one of them because we just don't travel the miles that you need to do that. So at this point, while 1.9 I thought I would never see in my career at SciRide ever, is a little surprising, I agree. But I do think ridership will rebound. I don't know how we compare to larger, above 200,000 transit agencies, which is why I am on our legislative committee for our local lobbyists and stuff to try to, I think the pandemic has affected ridership a lot more for college university cities than it has for anybody else, because we're very dependent on college students, which is it's not just SciRide that does that. I mean, this is a trend you see in any city. So I don't believe we'll ever get back to 6.7 million. I don't think ISU will get back that high. I think that we'll somewhere adjust to that new normal that everybody kind of keeps talking about. I guess, as I think it through, the bonus to all, I got a lot of things going through my head. The bonus to that is that STIC funding that I just discussed, what came out in that bipartisan agreement. And one of the things we've been lobbying for, and I know you've heard me talk about it before, is STIC funding. STIC funding gets 2% of the appropriation of that, and it is increased to 3% once the appropriation bill passes and all that. Now, I don't know what that's going to look like because of the census. So the census kind of throws everything off too, because we're competing against cities over 200,000. So we're the 50 to 200,000 range, 199,000. So I don't know who went into 50,000 and I don't know who came out of it. So at this point, I don't know what the answer is. But I do feel like we've done some pro formas for the board. I feel like we're in a good position, at least in the short term, to weather kind of what's happening. If some of you have been on the board, we have a board directive of operations fund closing balance of 7.5% to 10%. It's well above that. So I think that kind of aligns with, we can probably get through a few challenges. I hope that answered.
Yeah, it does. And I don't expect you to have a crystal ball, it's just tomorrow. Just thinking long-term is going to be, as we go down the road, in the years ahead with council, it's just, you do a good job, of keeping us appraised. And it's nice to have, Brahman on the board at this point. You're aware of what's, going on and trying to keep that pipeline, but it's just a lot of balls in the air, so to speak.
Yeah.
But just knowing how we're tied to the ridership has really helped in terms of capital improvements and equipment and funding. If that stays down, we may have to do we do have some upside on the transit levy. We can go up to 95 cents. You're at not quite 60 cents, right? But
Correct.
that ends up being more from the taxpayer or from the, in property tax. But anyway, there's some options. But
Yeah, I think that it stayed low. I think we do have to kind of take a step back and look at the services we're providing, and are there opportunities to fine tune and to recalibrate maybe what I talked about, SIRI 2.0 a little bit, so that it does within the financial realities of our funding partners. It has changed since SIRI 2.0 started, which was the full system redesign. So I think, it's a conversation we've definitely had with the board at the board level. I think we're all, at this point, it's a little early to tell, but we're cautiously optimistic about it.
thank you. Anything else?
Barb, one follow-up. So we obviously have a very aggressive climate action goal before us, and I think it's going to require us to really rethink how we're using cars and try and encourage people to ride their bike or to take Cyride. Has your leadership started thinking about how we can get more community side people into our buses as opposed to taking cars?
Well, I feel like if we had the answer to that, we would be.
But is there anything else? Clearly, you've been thinking about that since you got to Cyride.
Yeah.
But are there, just given the council's goal, is there anything else? Are there any stones we haven't turned over, advertising, ways to try to get people to try out Cyride?
Yeah, no, I didn't mean to in any way minimize
No, I
your
know.
comment. I 100% agree. Yes, to grow the community riders would be great for everybody, for climate, but it'd also be great for the citizens of Ames as well. So I think by looking at that demand response software that I talked about, I think that's an opportunity to maybe try to capture people who want to try the bus, but are a little nervous about trying the bus, because there's a lot of things you got to do to ride the bus. You have to be on time, you have to have your fare, you have to have a lot of things, it's, you hit the snooze one extra time, you might be on a different bus or miss your bus. So I think those are the kind of things that we have to continue to talk about and think through. And as the city grows, how are we growing? Can we grow to that city? Do we think we'll have riders there? But talking about the climate action plan, I just wanted to say that we, some of my staff here, we did have an opportunity to talk to the consultants, which was helpful because they had showed us some assumptions. And I think some of the assumptions were, well, I understand the goal we're trying to get to have some real financial impacts on Cyride. So I wanted them to just understand kind of what's happening and kind of our thoughts and where buses are in some of that, some of the things that they're presenting. So I feel like they're very receptive to that. So I hope what you get from them will be helpful and give you a better idea of how we think we can fit in to that.
Great, thank you.
Barb, you mentioned Cyride 2.0. How has that played out? Is it generally going well? I know there's going to be some adjustment to it, but what's your assessment of it?
I think that's a great question. Cyride 2.0 fully happened, and then a pandemic happened. So it's a little difficult to really judge what's happening. I think what we know is that ridership patterns have shifted. Is it because of 2.0 or is it because of the pandemic? I'm not sure. When we went into Cyride 2.0, we knew we didn't get it 100% right. So I do think it's important at some point when ridership stabilizes and when we kind of start seeing these patterns emerge and we start getting more of the APC data, that we do look at what I've told the board is kind of a system recalibration where we can go and maybe look at, are we serving where we need to serve? Can we continue to serve under the financial realities facing our funding partners? And how are we serving the community? Because whenever you change service, people win and people lose, right? Obviously, so that's really why I want this kind of demand response software is I'm hoping that then there's another option. Maybe you don't have a bus by your house every 20 minutes, but maybe there's an opportunity for you to take something else. So I don't know if I fully answered your question, but
You did. Thank you.
Has Cyride internally considered fare free for the entire community as opposed to just students? And could you give me a little bit of your perspective on that?
did Browan suggest this one? No, I mean, yes. So that's an excellent question in all honesty. So City Council did approve a fare-free summer. I can't remember the exact year. Do you remember?
I don't.
So because we don't have as much ridership in the summer, City Council approved helping to fund Cyride for the summer so that we could have fare-free to everybody. It was successful. We did see increases in ridership. Browan has asked the board, us to look at fare-free as a community and what that might cost. I mean, it's more than just replacing the operating costs, but of the fare box revenues. So we told her we would look at that after the budget. I don't know what the cost will be at this point. I mean, I can tell you what the fare box recovery would be, but ultimately, I think if we were to make Cyride fare free, the experience we had when we made the students fare free is we phased it over 2 years, and then people want service, you know, because if I'm paying for it and it's free, I want it. So I want to be able to deliver to the community what they want. I think is really what our maybe not hesitation, but we just want to make sure if we do that, then we're providing the services that the community really wants. Did that answer it?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thanks, Barb.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone
Thanks,
coming.
Barb. Good job.
Thank you.
All right, we'll welcome Brian up here, and we'll start on page 232 and go 232, 233, and then 238, 239 for City Council and City Manager.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's my pleasure tonight to present to you the City Council's budget, followed by the City Manager's Office budget. We'll jump into the first slide. The Council's budget starts on page 232. This has been a year of transition. We had an election in 2021, and so the City Council said goodbye to David Martin and said hello to Anita Rollins. We've undergone the work of transitioning Anita into all of the many things that the council has to undertake. And we've got some photos here of what that kickoff looks like with the swearing in that was over a couple of sessions a month ago. On January 22nd, the City Council met for goal setting, and these values were largely reaffirmed with some minor modifications. We intend to bring back to the City Council in a week and a half the recommended tasks and a final look at the goals that we will undertake both as you as the council and us as the city staff in order to achieve and bring these values to life. So we are looking forward to finalizing that and bringing that to you here shortly. The council was able to dedicate a number of new projects this year, and as I look through these photos, I realized that often these dedications were in terrible cold and rain, or both. So this is the Grand Avenue extension in the cold and wind, if I recall correctly. That was one major project that has taken many, many years and the work of several councils successively, along with a number of city staff folks and other partners to accomplish as a major milestone for the community for this particular phase of that project to proceed. There's one more phase to go, and we'll look forward to finishing that project out here in the next year or so. Here's a photo in some more cold. This is the new Ada Hayden fishing pier, dedicating that. Councilmember Corriere, I believe, got the honors on cutting the ribbon on that one. Next. Welch Avenue in the rain. The at least with the rain that we were experiencing, it gave an opportunity to test out some of the new stormwater features along Welch Avenue, verify that they work. The city council also participated in a ribbon cutting for the Lowhead Dam project, the removal of the Lowhead Dam and replacement with the rock rapids and other features in North River Valley Park. We also had a ribbon cutting for the Homewood Golf Course Clubhouse, which has been a very nice amenity to have for not only the golfers, but also for community events. We've held trainings for city staff, other meetings there, and of course your goal setting session was there as well. So it's a really nice space to be able to have and hang out in the woods with the wildlife and the nice views that it provides. And the Miracle Field and Inclusive Playground project. This is an extraordinary effort by volunteers, donors, and local businesses to make this into a real jewel of the park system. Lots of contributions from a lot of individuals, and it's resulted in a lot of smiles and days of enjoyment by the kids in the community. The council also has participated in some special events this year. A number of them. The council night at the band shell was this summer, which was a successful dedication of the new LED lighting system in the band shell. And if you drive by evenings, it's really quite pretty to see. And we look forward to making the most out of that in the years to come. The council participated in the Healthy Estate Walk, the mayor and council's bike ride, which provided an opportunity to showcase some new projects around parts of Ames, and then Welcome Fest on the ISU campus to welcome students to the community and provide them with some information about our organization and resources that they might be interested in utilizing. That does it for the city council budget presentation. We'll turn to the city manager's office budget. That begins on page 238 in the budget book. And obviously in the past year and for the foreseeable future, the city's response to COVID-19 has really colored a lot of the work that we have done. It continues to impact a number of the aspects of the overall city operations as we respond to ensure that the services continue to be provided and that employees remain as safe as possible. The city manager's office, despite COVID, has focused on supporting a number of activities. These have included the Climate Action Plan. We're undergoing that plan right now. The Waste to Energy Option Study, another big project that the city manager's office is assisting with steering. The Indoor Aquatic Facility and Lincoln Way redevelopment project. The Downtown Plaza, our office is assisting with. And then working in the Emergency Operations Center. We've learned quite a lot from some of the disasters that we've had the opportunity to experience in the past year and a half or 2 years. The train derailment and the winter wind event, our winter derecho, this past December were events where we were able to utilize some of the knowledge that we had learned from prior events that had taken place more recently, and improve how we prepared and responded to those events. And overall, I think we are in a position where we are much better prepared to respond to disasters and emergency operations than we were a couple of years ago. So we make the most out of those, though we don't like to see them too often. And then finally, staff continues to support a variety of boards and commissions out of the city manager's office. There are a lot of new initiatives being pursued by these groups. So we have Asset and the Commission on the Arts, Public Art Commission. We've had a couple of new grant programs that the City Council has authorized in the past year that the arts commissions have worked on jointly in some cases, which has been a new experience. The Human Relations Commission continues to be supported out of our office, along with Ames International Partner Cities Association and Campus and Community Commission. And then the Climate Action Plan Supplemental Input Committee, that's been a major project area for Deb, along with her serving in a temporary role in the city assessor's office as a bridge until we're able to have a new assessor appointed. So that's taken up quite a bit of her time as well. Later this year, or perhaps early next year, fiscal year, we expect to begin recruitment for a new management analyst, which will provide some support for some of these boards and commissions, and then also work on projects across the departments and some of the council goal items as well. So that does it for the city manager's office. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any for the council's budget or the city manager's office budget. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
To Diane for the city clerk.
Good evening. So the city clerk division budget begins on page 236. It ends on 237. So our main source of revenue comes from beer and liquor licenses, and it totaled only $16,563 last fiscal year. So that was significantly less than our over 70,000 that we have become accustomed to in the past years. So although that amount of revenue from last fiscal year is accurate, it is shown at less than 17,000, we still processed 133 renewals and 13 new licenses. And that's very consistent in past years. So one of the alcoholic beverages division's response to COVID in 2019 was to delay processing the applicant's electronic bank transfers. I had to inquire about that because they didn't let us know that, we weren't going to get that revenue. And so I was told that they were only going to send us the revenues that were due the city when the establishment renewed the next year. So ABD is still collecting those fees, and they are sending the city its share for both years when the establishments renew. Now, we did have some that didn't renew, and so they are sending those out by the 15th of February. So as you know, the city receives 65% of the fee paid for licenses that involve hard liquor, and 100% of the fee for the beer permits. So as I said, there were some establishments that didn't renew and that don't plan to renew, so that equated to 7 who actually closed permanently, or they stopped selling beer and liquor. So when we inquired of that, the establishment owners informed us that the pandemic was the reason that they needed to close or stop selling alcohol. As you know, there was a proclamation that said people couldn't gather, and so that really cut into the bar's revenues. We also only had 2 establishments that applied for wine tasting events, and neither of those establishments were able to actually conduct those because of the proclamation. And there were only 7 5-day permits that you approved, and we averaged over the last 3 years 26, so that was a big drop as well. So in addition to liquor licenses and beer permits, we are responsible for issuing 15 different categories of permits. Last fiscal year, we actually processed more permits and licenses. We got up to 598, and accounting for that slight increase were temporary obstruction permits and transient merchant permits. Requests for notarizations and certifications bounced back significantly. We only had 120 in fiscal year 1920 because part of the reason we were closed for 9 weeks. So we didn't do that for the public. And the last week, we were able to figure out a way. We were having so many customers requesting the service, we were able to find a way to actually have them come in, put their ID in a little box. We looked at it. We looked at their signature, and we were able to actually notarize some documents for people, even though we were closed. So there's 3 services that we don't charge for, and those are the temporary obstruction permits, and that was one of the areas that did increase. Notarization and certifications, which was the second category that did increase, and we don't charge for banner permits either. A very small amount of our revenue comes from development application fees and appeals to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Those fees are split among planning and housing, legal, and the city clerk's office. So regarding our expenses, publishing is the largest expense. So we published the legal notice, the minutes, and ordinances, and budgeted $45,000 for this fiscal year. And it does appear at this time to be an accurate estimate. It was just under $45,000 last year when we published 199 documents. That fee is charged by the legislature, and we don't really have any say in it, and it does increase every year. Our second highest expense is recording. Last year, we recorded 91 documents, but I think we're going to be higher than that. We've already recorded 34 more at this point in time than we were last year at this time. It has definitely helped our budget to have city and school elections combined and the cost shared. So the city's share of the November 2021 city election equated to just over $15,000. Our 22-23 proposed budget does not include any requests for capital. We had over 1,100 document searches performed each month through our files management system. That saves us all time. At the end of 21, we had 53 additional staff members from multiple departments using that system to find their own documents. Our biggest users are legal, public works, and planning. One of the biggest advantages of that system is the querying. We're able to run queries on that data, and we've checked that every 3 months to find out which documents will expire so nothing falls through the cracks. So we do at least 57 documents per month that require some type of follow-up by a department. Requests for documents under the Freedom of Information Act hit an all-time high last year. There were 114 that came in, and the total amount of time and materials charged for the 88 that I followed up on, which are the non-routine requests, equated to just under $1,500, but we only collected 508. So the requesting party asks us to find out their information that they want to know, and we give them an estimate. And so in order to give that estimate, we pretty much have to go through the process and find the data, and then they decide it's too much money or they don't want it anymore. And so we've done that basically in vain. So in summary, the city clerk's budget shows a decrease of 1.2% from adopted. And that is primarily due to no funds being allocated for an election in 2022. We have a small budget. And so budgeting $20,000 a year usually makes up about that difference. So now I am anxious to talk to you about your accomplishments. So tracking your accomplishments, and you already know that your service to the citizens of Ames requires a great deal of time, and much of that is spent in meetings. So the total number of hours that you spent in city council meetings last fiscal year was 99.28 hours, which equates to an average of 2.26 hours per meeting. And that sounds like a lot, but I looked back and you've actually become much more efficient.
Mhm.
So the total number of
John.
last fiscal year, the total number of hours that you spent were 135. So that equated to about 2.93 hours per meeting. So you've done much better this year. You invested a lot of time, but you accomplished a lot. So hit the second highest number of resolutions that were ever adopted at 695, and you adopted 26 ordinances, which on average is about what you normally do. There were 944 items on the agendas last fiscal year. And we prepared 196 council action summaries, which means that you gave direction to staff for an item that was included in the weekly non-agenda packet or after a staff report. So that was a record number as well. And that from that, we put those on the referral list. And that helps us keep track of what needs to be followed up on. So to conclude, I want to recognize my dedicated and very capable staff. Of course, you know Amy Colwell. She's been with us for about 3.5 years. Renee Hall has been with us for 17 months. And Carly Watson has been with us a little over a year. So that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'd love to try and answer them.
Diane, what accounts for the interesting fluctuation in the files management system numbers?
Well, we have more people looking for that. Are you talking about the number of documents that are in there?
No, I'm just talking about the budgeted amount that we see, because it's 41,000 something, then it's down to 85, then it's adjusted to 56, and now it's back down to 7,400.
Right. So we actually embarked on a major upgrade to the system. We're still, it will take us a good 3 years to accomplish that. And my last budget discussion with you, I told you that we had increased the budget by 74,000 right before COVID and during COVID. I dealt with a great decline in staff as far as, we didn't have many people. And so I was able to use the salary savings. We did need a little bit from the general fund, but for the most part, that came from salary savings. And so we're still not finished with that, and we probably won't be finished with it until late in 2023. So that's the fluctuation that you're seeing. And it's not an easy task. It's converting, and we're putting it out on the cloud. We have a programmer from Golden, Colorado. In fact, he'll be here on Monday. And so he's converting those. There's a lot of data, a lot. And so we had like 202,000 main files, and then we had 54,000 attachments to that. And he's converting that all into the data that will be able to be linked. And it's just a major ordeal. He's also adding OCR capabilities, which will be great for us. And so looking forward to it being finished, but it'll take, I understand that it takes a while to do all of that and to make sure that it all works.
Is our staff doing the scanning or is someone else doing the scanning?
Our staff Donna Shear does the majority of it, although staff does some as well. And she comes in under the files management budget. She works on average about 6 hours a week. And of course, if enough documents come in, she's able to come in for 6 hours. So these come back from the recorder. These are Freedom of Information Act. These are ordinances. And if there's no work for her to scan and link, then she doesn't come in. So it's an efficient use of time. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. The Public Relations Office budget is on page 240 and 241. And I always like to start with just our mission statement for the office, which is our purpose, branding a positive city identity. So we work every day to make sure the City of Ames is recognized as the premier provider of municipal services in a vibrant, innovative, progressive university community. It was years ago that Bob Kindred and I sat down and kind of worked out that mission statement. And we did it in a way that it complements our ETP goal of exceptional service at the best price. And it's been a good way to ground ourselves and anchor ourselves as we move forward, as we work each day to make sure that we live the mission. I just want to make sure people realize that it's not just me alone that staffs our office. Media production services is part of public relations, and we've relied a lot on we rely a lot on part-time staff, as well as we've gotten a lot of assistance the last few years from our print shop through Courtney Henders, who's our graphics specialist. The next slide is really a list of some of the communication tools that we use. I think you should be familiar with a lot of these. I fill your mailboxes with press releases. We hit over 200 this past year. And so we're averaging 3 to 4 a week. And some of those are ones that we do regularly, and you're familiar with those. But a lot of them are just new programs and services or new reasons that we need to engage with the community and let them know what's happening. Our newsletters, we do an internal and an external newsletter. You may have noticed that we have switched to a digital internal newsletter. So we're trying that out. We're getting some mixed reaction to that, but primarily positive. I think people are having different expectations about how they're reading their information, and an internal digital newsletter has the ability to have links and clicks and color, and those are kind of standards now in communications. So that has been just in January, so we'll keep following up on that to see how that goes. We have a lot of different exposure on social media. We have 18 Facebook pages, 4 Twitter accounts, 5 Instagram accounts. We're not really looking to expand that. And of the 18 Facebook accounts, I cannot tell you that I look at all of them, but I do look at probably 4 to 6 of them regularly. And we have tried to become a lot more strategic in how we post on those Facebook pages and cross-promote and support one another. You're probably, I'm sure, familiar with our website, cityofames.org. We will continue to look for ways to improve that website over the next year, so it's more user-friendly and has a smoother look and feel for users. Public education, speaking, and tours, and those have not been over the last year or so as requested as in the past, but I will tell you that Deb and Mary Rankin and I are getting a lot of requests to speak about the Climate Action Plan. And we are looking at a lot of opportunities to get the information out on that. I think it's come up several times earlier in other presentations that the Climate Action Plan is going to require a lot of education and a lot of community involvement and support. And so we know that we have our work cut out for us for this coming year. Brian talked about the recognition events and the outreach events that you participated in the past, and we will continue to work on those in the future. And of course, the print shop collaboration is the work that we do with Courtney to really improve the professional look of our communications. And it's gone really well. Just some of the bigger events or campaigns that we've worked on this past year. I know it seems kind of funny to still be talking about Census 2020 in 2022, but I know you've heard me say this is my third census, and it was. Hopefully, maybe the last, but it was the most unusual census I've ever been involved in. The pandemic kind of threw everything for a loop. I feel good about the number, the 66,427. We are continuing to have discussion with the census, with the U.S. Census about that number, and we're continuing to check our own records and our own files to make sure that there are no concerns or areas of concern. But I was looking back on my phone recently, and I came across a picture I had taken in May of 2019. And yeah, Kelly's still here. Kelly, Ben McConville, Tony Filippini, and I all made an estimate in 2019 of the census number. And at that point, Ben and I guessed in the 68,000s. Kelly guessed 67,000. And Tony Filippini, who was our transportation planner and is no longer with us, guessed 66,800.
Oh.
So it really makes me feel like that's a pretty solid number. So we should feel good about that. As I mentioned before, the climate action plan is something that we'll continue to work on. Utility conservation programs, rebate services, we always keep those into the rotation. And COVID-19, although it was not as prominent this past year, was still, we kind of stepped back into a more of a supporting role, supporting our healthcare professionals as they got information out. They are the experts, and we're in the position of helping them. And then also when COVID-19 had impact on city services, getting that information out to our citizens. I know that Don Com talked about the new text your power outage into our system. I think he forgot to mention that was one of the programs we're promoting. Make sure you use the power outage reporting number to text your power outage in. That same number that you text or that you call right now, the 515-239-5240, that's the number you could now text. So text Ames into that, and you will understand right away if you're in the system or not. So I just have the next slide's just some pictures. Oh, sorry, I got out of order. The next slide is just some events that we did do in 2021. They started coming back. So some of these will look familiar to you. We did not do a boards and commissions appreciation luncheon, but we did provide gifts. So we contacted all our boards and commissioners and said thank you, and provided them with a gift. We were able to do some of the outside events again, like the breakfast, council night at the band shell. Rummage Rampage came back, which was a huge success, just enormously popular. I think that 1 year of being off made a difference. We did celebrate Electric's 125th anniversary. If you want to go to the next slide. You can see some of those, some of the display. We have it. It's still up right now at the Ames History Museum, the 125 years of electricity. We revamped our presence at Welcome Fest this year, which I think we all could agree was extraordinarily successful. So successful, we ran out of T-shirts so quickly that it was really a hard game to play without a prize. So we are definitely going to bring that back next year. We're going to order more T-shirts. We're going to have, I think it's a great outreach opportunity. On the bottom, you'll see we did not do our 4th of July pancake breakfast, but we did bring back, we did start this other program called the Ames Appreciates, where we took posters out to different events, like we went to band shell concerts, farmers market, let kids and adults color them, talk about what they loved about Ames, and then we put them up on our front lawn here at City Hall over that weekend. So that was a lot of fun, and I'm sure we'll do something like that again this summer. Some events for this year, you'll get these on your calendar. I try to keep your calendars all updated, but we will be doing eco chats with a kickoff on February 24th about climate action planning. Our boards and commissions appreciation lunch is in person this year on March 30th. That is set. We've got the bike to work week breakfast set, the bike ride, the mayor and council bike ride is set. And then, and Rummage Rampage is set for July 29th through August 6th. So we're excited. We have a nice slate of events. We're continuing to add them. Since then, we're going to be at Sustainapalooza on Iowa State University campus on February 22nd. And we'll just continue to add those events in as those opportunities arise, because leveraging the ability to work with other groups helps us spread our message. We're able to reach more audiences, and it just adds to more collaboration and partnership in the community. So,
Those dates,
which one?
the last slide with the dates.
Yes,
The mayor and city council
Yeah, that's
bike ride, that looks
it's the
like a Wednesday.
21st. I'm
20th.
sorry, it is the
21st.
21st.
Okay, good. And the 11th, that's a Wednesday, we do the Bike to Work Week breakfast. It's usually a Monday.
Yeah. I wonder if I copied the wrong slide. I will get these to you.
Okay.
I just checked that Bears bike ride. I don't know how I didn't. Yes, it is Saturday, May 21st, as it is on your calendar. And the Bike to Work Week breakfast is always on that Monday.
The Monday.
Bronwyn, which date is it?
The 9th?
May 9th.
Oh, no,
Okay.
the 16th.
16th. Okay.
Is it?
16.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think these were the dates you sent to my
I
calendar.
only care about the bike related ones, so the rest of them I'm not.
I'm sorry. I will get that corrected. I moved around a lot of slides and changed the dates. I was actually happy that some of the events were carried forward from 2021 to 2022, and I must have missed the changing of the date in there. I did pull the council night at the band shell. It's always in June. I don't have the exact date yet, but I will get that to you as soon as I can. And for the public and others who are watching, we will get the correct dates out and on our City of Ames calendar, cityofames.org. Any questions?
I would just say
No.
that with the decline of print media and newspapers, the social media just continues to be, I think, an important way for us to communicate with our community. And Facebook has been, I think the Facebook posts have been fantastic. It's challenging because there are a number of these Facebook groups about Ames, and there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of toxicity. I don't even go into them anymore because I think it's a waste of time. And so your Facebook posts really provide very valuable information to help keep our community up to date. So thanks for doing that so faithfully.
Thank you. And I think we've recognized that is a direction that it's a place we need to be, and we need to be directing more resources to it. So I appreciate that feedback.
Susan, have you gotten any complaints after that first, was it City Slickers that's gone?
On digital? We did.
Were there complaints about the puzzle and being able to do the puzzle?
Complaints is a little harsh. There was some disappointment,
Uh-huh.
but we are doing it. I think we're looking at a way to move forward where you can just print that last page. We're trying. Change is hard. Okay, thank you. Oh, and now I would like to introduce Bill Gebhardt, who will handle the media production services part.
You got nervous. You didn't know I was there. Hello, how are you guys this evening?
Great.
Glad to be here to represent media production services. I believe our portion of the budget is on the next couple pages. I know you've seen videos from us for the past couple days, so I'm just going to show you one short one that highlights maybe a few other things that we've been doing this year. So that's just a really quick video of some of the things we've done. I know you've seen other videos that we've been doing. One thing I want to point out about that video too is we opted for the computer look just because it kind of symbolizes we've fully made the switch from making more long form videos for Channel 12 and then putting them on YouTube to we're making videos for Facebook, YouTube, social media, and then those happen to populate Channel 12 for us. That's the main thing that we've been asked for, especially with the pandemic. But I mean, even just the times in general, I think, Mr. Garden, you mentioned that earlier, that's where people are getting their information. We are seeing a continued use of video across all departments. Everyone's asking us for things. That I didn't mean that to sound like I was exasperated. We love it. But we are doing a lot of things, even just in the 2 years that I've been here, that weren't happening before. We're recording a lot of training so that we can get them online, which makes them easier to get out to staff. I know HR does a lot of that on the extranet, so staff can click in and get those trainings wherever they're at. Promos for events, boards and commissions. We already record your meetings, as you know, and then we record 6 other meetings that then get broadcast, and we added a 7th one probably in the fall of last year that we're recording for them. We're not actually broadcasting them, but and then commissions. Some of the commissions ask us for various projects throughout, whether that's recording and editing the ribbon cuttings that you all attend or that happen, and then Human Relations Commission is a big one, getting their messages out. We just posted a video at noon today about the Chinese New Year. And so like getting their messages out and things like that, a lot of people have been reaching out to us, and we are super excited to be busy. But we're definitely doing a lot of things. As Susan mentioned about social media and talking about social media and web, that is where we're getting our messages out. Those are the top 2 on the citizen satisfaction survey of where people are getting their information. And social media algorithms, they favor video. So when we're talking about when to post things on social media, Christy in our office will ask, can I move your video? And I always tell her, I don't care. It's a video. It's gonna trump anything that's going on at the time. So it can always go in those weird cracks of time, and people will wind up seeing it. When you look at our pages, you'll see that where we talk about the number of individual video views, sort of changing the way that we're calculating that for 2 reasons. One, because we kind of see our video views on social media more holistically, as in our post views, because it's not just about our videos, it's about our pictures and our other posts, and make sure people get the information. The other reason is with Facebook's change to Meta, they actually don't allow you to individually view analytics on single videos. But it sort of worked with where we were going anyway, so we'll say we were ahead of Facebook on that. So that's good for us, right? But yeah, they are favoring video, and so a lot of people are asking for them. Things are getting shorter. We've found that a 29-second video will play 3 times without the user having to do anything before it'll stop. So we've been encouraging people to make 29-second videos or shorter videos. Sometimes you can't always do that, but it's led to an increase of people wanting more and more videos. We're also exploring other areas of communications, bringing back some of the old shows that Derek used to do, but kind of in a new and shorter light and new scope, as well as we're looking into possibilities of doing podcasts and other things like that, other ways to reach people that fall into the social media realm and do that. If you look at our budget, not a ton has changed, but in addition to our need to repair and upgrade the equipment that we have, both in this room and in our offices, our biggest need is staff. More and more people are asking for videos, and so right now I have 2 part-time staff. After tonight, I have 1 part-time staff, but I have interviews next week. So, but it's just being able to have the people to make sure that we can get everything done has been one of our biggest needs. And I think that's all I have, short and sweet. So unless you guys have questions.
Gonna get into TikTok?
We have looked into TikTok. It actually started with an HR request for the police and for recruitment. I'm still working on it. I put it on my phone, and I'm trying to figure it out. The thing I'm most concerned about is developing a following and how to develop that following on TikTok without falling into the traps of inadvertently publicizing other things that we don't, whatever we're next to, we don't want to make sure we're saying that's okay. So it is definitely something we are looking into. We have, and Susan didn't mention this, but we have City of Ames logins to lots of social medias that we don't use because we just haven't figured out the best way to utilize them at this time, but we're working on it.
Cool.
Maybe they could have Don Common's Pink Bunny outfit on TikTok, and that would get a lot of views.
That might be all we need, right?
Have him dancing around and opening his presents, that kind of stuff.
But if you give him a platform too, he'll take off.
I'm hoping you're going to do a show with Deb. Where's Deb now?
Yeah. Oh my
Kind of a reprise of Brian's experience.
So to be honest, that is one of the ones we're considering. I haven't talked to them about it.
You have now.
It's been a similar, shorter version of Where's Brian that includes Steve and the. I haven't talked about it yet.
No
Yes,
pressure.
You have talked about it.
Now I have. So, and now you know about it. So that helps too.
Now we have to.
All right.
I see the drones, and so are you already using the drones? And I see that you're going to be helping others to learn how to operate the drones.
So we currently have 2 drones. We crashed one, and then we bought a new one because we needed it, and then we wound up being able to fix it pretty reasonably. So we have 2 drones. Currently in the city, there's just 2 drone pilots. Kevin Grease from Cyride has been phenomenal for me getting drone footage and things like that. And then Myron Derringer in Public Works has his license, and I'm studying. I fly a drone recreationally, but for the city, I can't do it at this time. But part of it is I know Public Works is asking for some drone money, and so the idea is to build a network of drone pilots. In my example, Kevin Grease from Cyride does most of my shooting, but if he's not available, then I just do without. When you're talking about things like public works and public safety, if Kevin Grease is out of town, they still need to get whatever they need to get. For my videos, that doesn't always mean that, but especially you're talking public safety, you need someone that can get out there. And so we've been talking about and working on people in different departments to become pilots, to basically have a network so that if there's a need, we can fill it quickly and not rely on a single person.
Okay. Thanks. I was just curious.
No, that's fine. I like talking drones.
All right. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hey, Mark.
So the City of Ames Legal Department, our budget is on pages 252 and 253. Never changes much. It's really pretty much the same thing. Little increases here and there, but from year to year, it doesn't change all that much. We strive for high quality legal services at the best value for the city. We are way cheaper than hiring outside counsel. I always like to say that. We try to provide sound and objective legal advice and representation, and strive to be trustworthy and uphold the highest standards of ethics, professionalism, and responsiveness. Next slide. And here's our legal team. So down in front, the 3 attorneys, I'm in the middle, and I am approaching 9 years now with the city, believe it or not. I'm just a little shocked when I did the math on that the other day. On the left on the photo is Jane Chang, who handles most of our prosecutions and also just does a little bit of everything, as all 3 of us do. Vicki Fielmeyer on the other side of me, and who handles a lot of our property and developer and planning matters, just because that's an area where she had a lot of expertise when she came. Same with Jane. She was a prosecutor for the Story County Attorney's Office before she came to us. So, but we all do a little bit of everything. And so there are no firm roles there, but some things just tend to go to those 2 because of their expertise. Jane has been with us 4 years now. Vicki's been with us 5 years. Behind us on the left is our newest staff member, Andrea Witt, who joined us in mid-November. Andrea is a longtime legal secretary and most recently was with the Newbro Law Firm here in Ames, and we're very happy to have her. Then we have Becky Ripke, who's our legal technician. She does everything from putting all the ordinances into ordinance format. She's our general receptionist. She She handles all the paperwork for all the prosecutions. And then Jill Grimsley. Jill is sort of my right-hand person in keeping the office running smoothly and assists with all sorts of things. So next slide. So what do we do in the city attorney's office? We advise the city council, staff, boards, and commissions, represent the city in administrative, regulatory, and arbitration matters, review and draft ordinances and amendments to the municipal code, contracts, and other legal documents, litigate in district court and appellate courts, and we assist and coordinate with outside counsel on litigation matters. When the city is sued, as you probably know, that we have ICAP as our insurance provider. They provide an outside counsel to represent the city. And so I'm the one who always coordinates with the outside counsel and always in conjunction with Bill Walton, our risk manager, who works with me on that. But anyway, we do a lot of things in terms of the legal matters for the city, a little bit of everything. So next slide. Here's our funding sources, primarily general fund. We get some money from various other funds and departments within the city. Next slide. And our biggest budget item is always the personal services, which are the salaries and benefits of the employees, because that's mostly what we do. Contractuals, everything from pro law, which is our database where we keep track of all the legal matters. Our Westlaw subscription, which is our legal research service. And I think all of our continuing legal education and that sort of thing, and professional dues get paid out of the contractual. And commodities are just, pens and papers and that sort of things. And then internal services. Next slide. Guess that's it. If you look at the 253, you'll see, we usually have somewhere around, mid 500s to maybe a little higher in terms of new matters that come in. A matter is something that we get in as a request for legal assistance. We document that in our database so we can keep track of it. We assign it to an attorney who works on it. So, if you're looking at, 580 last year, and, we're predicting around 550 this year. And it's, that's a lot. I mean, that's, I was doing the math earlier and figuring out that was about 4 per week per attorney of new matters that come in. Now, some of those are very easy ones. Review a professional services agreement. That's a 5-minute job to look at that. Others are things that stretch out over months or weeks or months. We handle all the property assessment appeals with the city assessor's office. So when people have appealed to the board of review and they're still not happy, then they can go to district court or to a state agency that's called PAB, which stands for the Property Assessment Appeal Board. And when they appeal to that, that's full-on litigation. We've got discovery, interrogatories. We have a hearing set. We have to get an expert witness in terms of an appraisal, and they have to get one. Sometimes we settle those, and often we end up going to hearing on those. And so, those stretch out over months. So it's a little hard to say, to come up with even like an average amount of time spent per matter, because they vary so much. I've never tried to do that, but I shouldn't mention that, this year we had about 40 appeals, property assessment appeals. Typically, we've had 15 in a year. So I'm very, very busy with those, and I handle most of those. So it's really consuming a lot of my time, and hopefully we'll get back to a reasonable level next year.
I don't think so. I think there'll be more.
Could be.
With the increase in property values.
Yeah.
I think you need to be gearing up for more of those.
Yeah. So that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But anyway, I guess that's the basics of it. I'm certainly open to any questions that anyone has.
Questions or comments? I think the one thing that Mark didn't put down is he was very helpful with the city assessor. There were lots of things. There's many times I come in and ask him questions. He meet with Deb and me and Bethany going through a lot of things. And so unfortunately, your day is never the same and you're always
Yeah.
getting asked questions, but greatly appreciate your.
And when I say we had 580 new matters in a year, those are things that we've plugged into our database to track. There are always things coming in, questions, phone calls. Police officers come in to talk to Jane with questions. I talk to Steve pretty much daily, and the other city managers. I talk to Diane daily. I mean, there are, department heads call me or they stop in to talk to me. That is going on constantly too. So that's not all documented here because a lot of those are quick legal questions and they don't really rise to the level of being something that we're putting into our database to keep track of because they're dealt with more quickly. So there's sort of a constant stream of those kind of things happening too.
Mark, I've really appreciated the updates from the Capitol when you were watching the governor during the pandemic, early parts of the pandemic, and keeping us updated on what the various proclamations and reports were from that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Just view that as part of my job to keep track of what's going on and affecting the law that affects you guys and that you should know about. So.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
Okay. Thank you.
Bethany.
Please for a little bit.
Evening.
Good evening.
We're excited to present some information about human resources. We had a lot happening this year. I'll be focusing on the human resources pages. That's the 254, 255. And then Bill Walton will present the risk management pages. And then Krista Hammer and Andrea Cardenas will present the health insurance and health promotion. So we'll kind of work through that. And then if you have questions, then we can all gather around and answer them for you, okay? So the major focus of what human resources does is to uphold excellence through people and to really work every day to honor these two goals of exceptional service at the best price and then providing employees with an enjoyable and stimulating work environment. We're challenged to do that every day. The last year has been no exception. So though COVID-19 efforts have slowed down somewhat, they didn't slow down too much for our office. And so we can go to the next slide. So we continue to have a COVID-19 pandemic response. Our office was responsible for all of the policy implementation for the organization, for all of the contact tracing. So employees call the HR office and work primarily with Andrea to work through all COVID-related situations. We were happy that things slowed down for a while. They've picked right back up. And so lots of phone calls, lots of coaching, lots of direction providing. And the policies change and the guidance from CDC changes pretty routinely and without warning. And so we get that information and then work to implement that with the employees. So it has been a tremendous amount of work, but we've learned a lot. And I think that we've helped employees work through some pretty tough situations this year. One of the other things that we've been working with is an incredible increase in recruitment activities. For some organizations, the recruitment activities really slowed down in the last 2 years. For us, they did not. And so we're seeing lots of movement. We see employees who retire, promote. So lots and lots of recruitment activities. So I thought it was important to share that we launched 182 recruitments in fiscal year 2021. That's a remarkable number and more than twice the previous year. So we count every recruitment that we start that we can't fill. We count that as a new recruitment when we start over. So that's not necessarily 182 separate positions that we went through, but we may have had to run a recruitment more than once. And so that speaks to this labor shortage that we hear about on the national stage. And so we received about 3,100 applications for those 182 recruitments that were launched, which seems like a lot, but it's about the same as we've gotten in previous years. And so if you think about the same number of applications for twice as many positions that are posted, we're seeing fewer and fewer applicants for each position. And so sometimes that means that we can't fill the position, we have to run the position again. But that is notable. I'm anticipating that we'll continue to see that high number of recruitments in the next year and probably about the same amount of applicants.
Should that be 21, 22, or is that 2021 is actually?
That's what was actually completed in 2021. We've continued to provide a variety of different training opportunities for employees, and the pandemic has really given us an opportunity to explore more virtual trainings than we've done in the past. So we've done a mix in this last year. The previous year it was mostly virtual trainings, but this last year and currently we're doing a nice mix of some in-person training and some virtual training. And it really depends on the type of training that we're trying to do. Some trainings just work so much better in person to have live conversation. Other sorts of training works really great to do virtually. And our health insurance benefits open enrollment processes has turned out it works really well to have virtual trainings for that. And so we're able to do that, and we'll continue doing that, pandemic or not, because it works really well. It's a great way to reach all of our employees and get out the information that we need to get out.
Was the DEI training in person or online?
That was in person. And so that's the next topic here to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion here at the city. So we did have citywide training. We're really excited about that. And we got all employees through this training. And so that was around 1,000 people that we got into some training this summer. We did it live in person. We used the auditorium space so we could spread people out and provide a safe environment to have this training. Leaders went through a 6-hour training, and all employees got to attend a 2-hour training. Training was really well received. We had a really great trainer. She came for 2 solid weeks. She came for 1 week, went home for a week, and then came back for another week. And she was fully dedicated to meeting with our staff at a variety of different times. We scheduled evenings, we scheduled early mornings, all over, and she was fantastic. So we got lots of really great feedback about that training, and we're really excited to do that. So in the next year, we know we're not going to be able to pull off an all-employee training every single year when it comes to DEI topics, but we want to continue the momentum that we have going. And so there is money budgeted for providing training to about half of the employees every year. So every other year, we'll be able to reach all of the employees. We also have approval to move forward with hiring a diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator, and we're anticipating that position will be, that recruitment will start this spring at some point, and then hopefully late spring, early summer, we'll have someone on board.
I'm pleased to present the risk management portion of the budget to you this evening. Risk management is about more than just buying insurance. My number one priority is employee safety. I'm proud to say that through the pandemic, we have continued safety training for our employees. We've done that both in person and virtually. And one of the ways that we really enhanced training in the last year is we brought in subject matter experts. For example, we brought in an Iowa State Patrol trooper to teach many of the divisions winter driving. safety. We brought in an Iowa DOT enforcement officer to work with some of our CDL drivers on pre-trip inspections. And just recently, we worked with the National Weather Service out of Johnston on severe weather alertness and training. Our liability and program, as Mark said, is through ICAP. So I thought I'd give you a breakdown. You've got the numbers in front of you. Generally, this is the way it breaks out almost year to year, but general liability is our largest liability insurance premium. That's also our highest deductible program. And then it's followed by transit, which is large, and then auto, professional, and police liability. As in previous years, commercial property insurance is becoming more and more expensive. This is due to the natural disasters that we've seen, wildfires in California, Colorado, hurricanes down south. Those insurance companies usually purchase reinsurance to cover parts of their losses. The reinsurance companies have been hit hard by a lot of these major events, and they've passed that on to their customers, and thus it gets passed on to us. The municipal insurance portion of it is about 25%, 25%. The power plant insurance is the most costly. And then flood and terrorism, most commercial insurance properties or property policies exclude terrorism. So we have to add that back in for coverage on things like the power plant and City Hall. And I am going to turn I think Krista's next.
Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. I have the pleasure of introducing the health insurance management piece for a start, and then I'll pass it on to my co-partner with the Health Promotions Division, Andrea. But I just wanted to make sure that you're aware that little avatar you've been seeing periodically through the program tonight in our section. That's me. I'm the face and the voice behind that avatar. So you'll see that in my next section as well. Just to start out, though, we have had a goal ever since I joined the city 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago, that with the health insurance rates, we've had the goal of not trying to go above 10% of an increase. And even though you see a kind of a larger number for our projection for 22-23 in the current budget documents you have in front of you, we're still below that goal. So that's a great way to introduce what we're trying to accomplish for starting July 1 of this current calendar year. But I want to also let you know that compared to what we are anticipating for the increase in our rates, our partners across the state, specifically in the book of business with our health insurance provider, with cities and counties across the state of Iowa, some of them are already experiencing double digits. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of that we are still meeting our goal, but yet we're still below what the book of business looks like across the state of Iowa. So
on that point, I mean,
Yep.
I think it'd be very valuable for future presentations to show more of a standard baseline on there. I'm getting killed on health insurance, and so are my clients and people I know. So this is fantastic. But I think to show the baseline would really accentuate that.
Okay, note taken. Note definitely taken. I think it might have been in the past presentations before, and we kind of took it out to simplify it, but if it'd be valuable information, we can definitely.
It just shows how well you're doing.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that note. So moving on to our next slide, kind of gives you an idea of what our whole encompassing expenditures look like for what we anticipate for 22-23. I still want to point out the green area, the 1% health insurance or health administration. We've been pretty steady at only having 1% of our entire budget under the health administration piece. And that includes not only the HR administrative costs like salaries. What else could I say about that? Salaries, our contract for our compliance group, Gallagher, is also included in that. They help us meet compliance needs for health insurance. So we've done a really great job of trying to manage that cost piece. We still, obviously, and I think this has been a repetitive conclusion every year, that the majority of our expenditures are in our medical claims. And most of that is due to the the increase of pharmacy claims is separate, but we have a lot of different things going on in the world. And we have certain individuals who, and I'll get up into this in a second with excess insurance, but we have a certain group of individuals experiencing higher medical issues. And our threshold right now is at $125,000 per individual for claims before our excess insurance kicks in, and then we'll cover claims over $125,000 per individual. And there is a slight increase with the excess insurance. It's usually called stop loss, where our experience and our book of business with Wellmark's experience is increasing with the need to have this type of coverage. And there was an 18% projected increase in that expense, but still it's only a 6% of our entire budget, just so you're aware. And obviously that other big outlier is the 19% in pharmacy claims, which still continues to grow with the cost of specific drugs for specialty issues like diabetes drugs. There are some other, I'm trying to think of the condition. Sorry, the condition's eluding me, but they're specialized specialty drugs that have not, they're either new on the market or they haven't expanded past their patent yet. So they're quite expensive. And then I wanted to talk about a new initiative that we started again with avatars, but this is in a paper format, posters more like. And me and Andrea partnered on this late in December, and we created a resource poster for our employees to share also with their family members based on the growing need for getting mental health resources out there to the masses. And our campaign title, "It's Okay to Not Be Okay," is hopefully the catchphrase that people will recognize with. But this resource provides contact information specifically on this poster for resources for CICS mobile response, some programs that NAMI specifically provides and on their website, suicide prevention lifeline, as well as the veterans crisis line. Those are outside resources from the city of Ames. And then we also put information on how to contact our employee assistance program and where they can find those details on our HR extranet, as well as what our health or medical plans provide for mental health coverage is. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop for people to get all that information. We sent that out as an electronic version to employees, as well as we also followed it up with an employee assistance program mailer to everybody's home address. So, and I'm going to pass it on to Andrea so she can talk a little bit about how that's impacted her health promotions program too.
Good evening. I'm Andrea Cardenas, Health Promotion Coordinator. And yes, Krista talked me into being an avatar. So now you can see me on all the posters.
You're immortalized.
Yes, that's right. And, I know you have also identified mental health as an important topic in the past year. Just in October, the American Academy of Pediatrics called a state of emergency for children's mental health. And so, looking at from our employees' perspective, as well as on our health insurance plan, making sure people know what resources they have available for treatment, for support for themselves and for their household members is really important. Julie Saxon and I teach a class called Mental Health Overview, where we talk about stigma of mental health, identifying symptoms of different mental illnesses, and how to support someone. And one of the things that really came out of that was that people said they'd seen posters, but they didn't really know exactly what resources were available. And so we wanted to make sure we put it out in a way that would really catch people's attention. Because again, this is a really important topic that we're just seeing come up more and more often. So my focus is on employee wellness, and we have a variety of programs that cover many areas of well-being. That's something that's really important to the organization. We also like to really meet people where they're at. So trying to take services out to the individual. For example, flu vaccination. That's been a really popular service. We did see a cost increase this past year, which was interesting. We bid that service out, and usually we get a bit of a lower cost for the on-site service versus walk-ins. But this year with the COVID pandemic, as far as having the vaccinations for COVID and flu shots, a lot of pharmacies were trying to drive people to the pharmacy. So we did see a cost increase to bring the service out here, but we still had a high rate of participation in a lot of different areas within the organization. And a lot of employees just say how nice it is to take 5 minutes to get a flu shot, and that they probably wouldn't do it if it wasn't so easy. Another thing that we added this year was COVID-19 vaccination. And so in the spring, we had a clinic for the initial vaccine doses, and then in the winter, we had a booster clinic. So we wanted to make sure that that was also available to employees and accessible.
Can you give us a quick sense of what this Fit City Challenge is?
Which one?
The Fit City Challenge. Can you give us just a thumbnail sketch of what that involves?
Yeah, so the Fit City Challenge is a 10-week fitness challenge where people can participate individual or with teams, and they can sign up for different divisions for either beginner or advanced level. So, and they track their workouts, and they can compete against each other. We really find that the team aspect gets people the support. So that way, if you're having a bad week or something gets in the way, you're sick or whatever, it's just another extra level of motivation to get back into that exercise routine. And so a lot of people just say it really helps them just get started and get back into a habit. And what we find is when we look at before and after that, we see a significant increase in just regular exercise. So really trying to get people to build that regular habit.
And what percentage would you say of the city employees participate in that program?
In that program, we have about a quarter of the employees participating.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well done.
This is all the information that we brought to share with you, and certainly if you have any questions, we can come and answer them for you.
I did have a question, just knowing that so many organizations and businesses have found that remote work has been an option that perhaps they hadn't considered before. Are you in your staffing, are any of the units thinking that they will offer remote working options or increase those, or did it not work? Or what's your sense of how the city did with that?
So we worked somewhat remotely for the period of time that city facilities were closed to the public. Not every work group worked from home during that time. Not every position in the city can work from home. And so some people did and some people didn't. What we found is when we opened back up to the public, it was really necessary to have all of the employees working from city facilities.
Okay.
It really helps us provide a really good customer service.
Okay.
And we've been paying attention all through the pandemic to make sure that we're still providing a safe workplace for employees. And so we're not seeing a lot of spread of COVID-19. We've had really good mitigation efforts in place. And so we haven't seen that, which is good. And so we've been able to continue to provide a really safe place for people to report to work. And we're finding that the reporting to work is really helpful for the customer service. And then when we're talking with people through the recruitment process, we're not finding all the time that candidates want remote work. A lot of times when we bring people in for interviews, they're really thankful. They're like, oh, you come to work. It's it's so nice, because I think some people are feeling pretty lonely working at home long term.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Just want council to know too is that Bethany has been an invaluable resource with the city assessor's office. She's helped us get applications for the assessor, for residential appraiser. You got another one that's going out as well too. So and I'm just dealing with some personnel situations too. So greatly and by the way, you know, they're not city employees. They're independently owned. I mean, owned. That's wrong. Independently, and under their own administration, so to speak. So appreciate all your efforts, and that's not reflected, I don't think, in your time recording or expenses, but appreciate that. So
Thank you.
all right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good work. In some ways, I think what we've done on the city level creates a model for what we can do broader. So many things. When you look at that list, this would be a great value for the whole city.
Kelly's going to start on page 204, Council.
All right, good evening, City Council.
Good evening.
Planning services. You see me very frequently, obviously on Tuesdays, but we do a lot of other things besides hang out on Tuesday nights. So I usually give you a good overview of what we do as a department rather than just city council items. So we have really kind of two main functions. I call it current planning, which is really all the development review and most of the customer service aspects of our job, which is dealing with the public on basic questions about fences and setbacks and where can I park, and along with development proposals and things along those lines. The other thing that we typically divide our services into is long range, or I call it policy planning. As long range, we're not always talking about 20 years down the road how something's going to turn out. Plan 2040 is a unique project in a council's career. As a planning director, I've been involved in two, so hopefully only one more in my career. That'd be great. So 3 would be perfect amount.
Nice try. Oh, no, not allowed.
So then policy planning is a lot of the text amendments, kind of the study issues that council brings up. It's often about your goals as well. So policy planning relates a lot to zoning and studies more so than just long range planning and thinking about the far future. We also cover administrative services as part of our budget presentation. That's the shared services that we have with Public Works and Inspection. So about 7 years ago, I believe, we combined our administrative staffs to have a little better effective coverage, a little more cross training, a little more depth, and bench help for all 3 of our departments as we work with the public. So those members of our staff, we've had 1 vacancy in that department or division for about half of the year. We're in the process of filling that now. We do support three other boards and commissions besides the council. This has been pretty constant, about HPC, Zoning, Board of Adjustment, and the P&Z. So I have a pie graph I've shown before. This is pretty much the graph I use every year, just to give you a sense of where does our time really go. And if you think of that red wedge as the policy planning, you're thinking about a quarter of our work time is how I think of this, really goes into those issues. Ames Plan 2040 was kind of a whole different animal, and the amount of time that was devoted to that. Customer service and other varies quite a bit, also depending on the needs of the public and what council referrals are. So I really think of about at least 50%, closer to maybe 2/3 of our time is really kind of spent aimed at development projects. And the rest of it is more about policy or customer service issues. So that gives you a kind of a sense. It's about 2/3, 50% to 2/3 development. And that's going to fluctuate every year. 5 years ago when I was here, I would have said we were closer to 75% of our time based on development and less time on all the other issues, because we were in the upswing of apartment development and there was so much going on. Our time was devoted to different issues. So from a current planning perspective, as you'll see in our budget highlights, I don't really foresee much different in the next year from last year. The low point was 2019 kind of for development across the board, whether it was commercial, single family, or multifamily. So the past 2 years, it's kind of rebounded right up to our average. I think we had 90 single family homes built last year. The average over 5, including 2019, was 92. So it seems like we've settled in to this just under 100 unit kind of production level of single family homes. That we're going to hope that changes a little bit. I think a number of us have goals to see a broader range of housing choices in the community, and I think that means an increase in production, not just a change of what we're doing. And you'll see on the next slide, we talked a lot. We thought last year a number of new subdivisions were going to come in and get approved and open up some opportunities. They got delayed, so they're kind of being pushed into the spring. I do expect you're going to see 3 of those still this spring to kind of open up new opportunities late this year. And then for sure into 2023. You did approve a new PUD overlay. That's hopefully a tool that helps unlock a couple of different projects. You will see one of those again this year later in February, actually, as one of the first ones through, and we expect another one again later this spring. So something we did work on, spend quite a bit of time on about a year ago, is now being used and seems like it's going to be a productive tool and worth the effort of the city. I do want to note that we all understand how enrollments dropped at the university, and really we had questions 2 or 3 years ago. What about all the vacancy? How are we ever going to survive with all the apartments that got built? It's really settled down. We're back to, as far as I understand from anecdotal stories and just different information we can see for vacancy rates, we're back to a normal vacancy rate. It really truly was probably about a 2-year blip overall in the process, and that was after almost 7 years of sustained no vacancy, no options in the housing market. So really not that bad to take that little 2-year blip. So we're back to regular vacancy rates and regular demands, more moderate rent increases, if rent increases at all, incentives available for people at times. But with that said, we're not seeing new apartments built. So now you get into that same kind of swing that we seem to get a lot at Ames. We seem to get a lot of wild swings of we don't do something, then we catch up really fast, and then we drop again. So it'll be interesting to see how apartment development comes into the conversation going forward, just because it has not been consistent now for about 3 years versus the overabundance that was happening 4 years ago when we last saw the big push for apartments. So this is a map. The white are really active single family subdivisions. The blue are those developments I think that we're going to be seeing this spring and later in 2022. So it's really, again, where we're growing. These are areas that have infrastructure already. This doesn't really reflect the planned growth of Ames Plan 2040. This is really that interim step of filling in what we already had planned before we need to move into some of those growth areas. So I hope this looks a little bit familiar to you. It shouldn't really surprise you about where we think these projects are going to be in the next year. So to continue on current planning, commercial and industrial, we've been pretty consistent for the past couple of years. A lot of smaller office, smaller commercial. There's not a lot of big box. Menards is probably the last super large big box that we're going to see for a while. I think I mentioned last year, that's just not something you're seeing in the commercial real estate market in general. So it doesn't seem like that would be something that we would be seeing either. We did approve that expansion at the former Kmart site that we all need to stop calling the former Kmart site because many people don't know what that even is. So they were approved to add over 50,000 square feet of retail space there. So that's probably the last one we're going to see for a while. But a lot of medical office and professional offices being built out east in the Philadelphia, Baltimore area, Eastgate subdivision. So we are seeing some additional opportunities for new buildings in the city. It's not all redevelopment. There's been a few of those as well. In terms of current planning, our big step forward is going to be that we're going to follow inspections lead. They've been taking online submittals for a good amount of time, so we understand how that's going to work. And we have had applicants ask for this. So we are going to move to the option of online submittals. It will not be mandatory. We'll still let people come in and submit over the counter. I think most applicants, especially on the large projects, are going to benefit financially. The cost of the printing of the paper, the large stacks of plans that we get is pretty substantial. So I'm pretty sure a high volume of our customers will go that route. Smaller projects, ZBA things where you're dealing with individual homeowners and smaller things probably or maybe won't. It's still going to be easier to probably file from your house than to come to my office. But that's why we're going to keep it open to do it both ways. We are
Really?
proposing.
Can I just ask about the technology that may be added into expenses? Is there anything additional that's needed, like oversized monitors for looking at those large plans online, or?
So there isn't necessarily a technology need that doesn't fit into our technology plan already. So we budget as a city for technology, and we have a replacement schedule for that. So as we've looked at this, adding a second monitor for $200 doesn't really change the budget that we've already planned for people to have. We're just using our normal technology budget. We don't think it's a one-time increase to do that. The only thing right now that I'm planning in the budget is a software cost. There is a plan review software that Inspections uses that they think is a lot more convenient to review plans with than just using Adobe Acrobat for it. So we are budgeting, I can't remember if it was $300 a license for that. Again, pretty small cost to dip our toe in the water there. So right now I'm thinking it's a pretty minor increase in cost to do that. And we are not going to take plans in and then print them ourselves. That is not how this is going to work. It's going to be come in digital and distributed digital. It will not be us just printing things, or we'll go broke doing that if we were to take on that cost. So that's not the goal. So I do have a minor fee increase. In my opinion, it's a minor fee increase for us. We haven't increased these for a long time. I say an average of 10%. So I didn't just go down the fee schedule and add 10% to everything. I really looked at our higher volume projects and our bigger ones, the site plans, the plats, the rezonings, those things that actually do take more time, have more cost associated with them, and the ones that will very likely have a financial benefit from eventual online submittals. We're keeping most of the ZBA costs the same. Those are typically not large development applicants. They're usually individuals or something that's a little bit more minor. So it's about a 10%. It's about $2,000 in revenue for us if those fees are approved to be increased. Oh, I'm sorry. One other activity, and I think we've talked about this for a while. Right now, the inspections division, the building official is labeled as the zoning enforcement officer, and they have a role of interpreting the zoning ordinance in consultation with the planning director. We're going to switch that to be where the planning director is the person that's really in charge of administering the zoning ordinance. We will still have a zoning enforcement function with inspections, a relationship there. We'll still have code enforcement that works through the inspections division. So it's not that we're taking on a code enforcement division into the planning department. We're taking on the administration of Chapter 29 to have a lot more consistency and familiarity with some of the nuances of the code. So from a time perspective, there's going to probably be a little bit more on our side just in terms of that customer service that maybe inspections would have handled first. We're often involved in those conversations, so I'm not sure it will be an increased demand, but it could be a few hours, a few dozen hours in a month that we have more time associated with that than inspections. So from the policy planning perspective, as you know, when we adopted Ames Plan 2040, there's a long list of implementation measures. I believe you have a workshop scheduled for us in 2 weeks, and we will be going through that in much greater detail. So I am not going to touch the implementation plan and the work plan tonight. I know we have another whole night to talk about that. So I just hit this with 3 bullets that the CIP in this budget cycle, it's moving Plan 24 to Plan 20 forward. We have the CIP with growth area infrastructure investments in it. I'm very happy to see that because that's consistent with what we decided back in December. The workshop you know about, and again, your council goals you'll be finalizing, but you did identify in your draft about housing priorities as one of those issues that again relates to Plan 2040. And we did carry forward $80,000 from the prior year to have available if outside consulting is needed. So if there's a project that would benefit from outside services, then we have some funding set aside for that. It doesn't mean we're going to spend it, but it is there if we need it. Some of the other major projects that kind of, again, I would say the last year is not our typical year. Talking about reinvestment applications, talking about negotiating large development agreements and large projects such as the Lincoln Way mixed use project. Some of those things are just not normal projects, but they are the major time investments we have. The downtown plaza, working in concert with Parks and Rec and facilities to get that project in front of you here pretty shortly to go out to bid. It's been a really interesting process to work with everybody on that. And as you know, the fringe plan update with the county, that's again, something that needs to be as part of the implementation of Plan 2040, but it's a project that's going to be coming here in front of you this spring to really get that done. We have until July under our current 2080 for that project. So hopefully we can have an update done by then and extend the 2080 to reflect the new plan. But
You're going to be talking about that on the 15th.
Yep. So I think that's one of those things we'll talk about in much more detail in 2 weeks. So as I mentioned, so that's the end of planning. If there's any questions about current planning, policy planning, anything along those lines, I'd field those now. And as I mentioned, we have shared services, administrative services. This really gives you an example of what they do. It's a 5-staff person division. We've had 1 vacancy in the supervisor position for most of this year. We aim to fill that. They do a lot of customer service kind of scheduling and responsiveness to people, application coordination. They also do administrative functions with payroll and other things that help support staff overall. So with that, we are done with planning services and administrative services. Any other questions?
Does not appear to be
Alright.
such.
I hand it over to Vanessa. We gotta escape.
Oh, I can need that.
Want to switch?
Booster. Good evening, everyone, Mayor and City Council. I know I'm the last person standing between you and rest at home. I will keep it brief and short. And just to let you know, this is the beginning of me seeing a lot more of you as I enter into the season of CDBG and action plans and so forth. So looking forward to it. Okay, as you know, the housing program is comprised of citywide housing, community development block grant program, and home programs. And we start on page 210. And through those programs, we are always looking to address housing needs by investing ways to increase the availability of affordable housing and explore ways to encourage the availability of all kind of housing types, which I believe is still in line with the goals that you're looking to continue or start as well. And the citywide program, you know, this program is continued to be a backup program to for our CDBG and other programs where we have dollars to spend that's not eligible to be spent under CDBG or home. And so we, for a number of years, use those funds as backup for temporary staff that we hire to do various programs. And also, we also use the funds also to work with the human service agencies. And one of the big activities that we try to do with them is the annual Hunger and Homeless Awareness Week events in partnership with them and trying to educate the community and making sure that agencies, the citizens are aware of how important our agencies are and doing activities to increase that. So that's kind of the end of that program. It's short, but it's been there for a while. Next is our Community Development Block Grant Program. And of course, this is our CDBG federally funded program that provides a variety of housing, community, and economic development activities to entitlement communities over 50,000. And as you know, and for our newest council member, we became an entitlement community back in 2004 when we reached that 50,000 population threshold. So for 2021-22, we were awarded our 17th annual allocation of CDBG funds, just over $500,000. That is not including our rollover funds or program income, which would total around just over $426,000. In addition to that, this budget includes $250,000 of general obligation funds that was committed to this fund to do the CDBG projects. So one of the biggest activities that we've been working on, of course, as you know, is the Baker subdivision that's located on 321 State Avenue. We are excited that we're just about 90% complete with our public improvements. We've been doing public improvements for a while. First was the extension of Tripp Street, and now we are just about done with the water, sewer, streets, and general improvements. We're working on an alley that would include a bike path to Franklin Park that would be in the subdivision, and that will be located between State Avenue and South Wilmouth. And one of the big things that we're doing for this project is going to be the city's first geothermal housing subdivision. We've been working with electric and all of those units are installed, and those funds were covered by electric. They were not part of our CDBG program for the installation of those wells for each lot. So that's all complete. And we still have just a couple improvements that we're going to be doing this summer to finish the Latimer Lane, and again, like the alley and some other small utilities that we didn't get done before the winter hit. So that's where we're hoping to start and finish up this coming spring. Also, as part of this project on the south side of the Baker subdivision, you know, we last year had solicited and selected a partner development, Prairie Fire Development and Builders Development Corp., to apply for low-income tax credit units back in March through the Iowa Finance Authority for the development of that south parcel. The award announcement was delayed until December of this year. We were not successful in being awarded in that first round. We scored about 3 points lower and fell into a lower tier. So we have been waiting because they had been talking about funding a second round, and that announcement is still pending. We also committed about $350,000 of our home regular funding to this project. And we had a big meeting with the partners the other day, and we're hoping to know the status of that second round of funding here by tomorrow, and that we will be bringing that information to you hopefully at an agenda this month, so that we'll know how we're proceeding with this project. Also, we have not yet received our 22-23 allocation. That's because the federal government is still operating on a continual resolution, hopefully only until I think it's February 18th. And so we projected our budget on our current allocation of just over the $500,000. As you know, we would be submitting our 18th annual action plan coming up. And so we would be doing public forums and all of that and bringing that to council. But according to the guidelines, we can't do any of that until we know what the funding will be. But I believe I'm going to go ahead and bring you some ideas so that it always causes us to be completely off, and we have to ask for extensions, and we just fall behind when we're delayed in getting funding. And I want to really get ahead of that this year, but it's already February, but there's hope. But, you know, I think if we can start the discussion on where you might want to head with this round of CDBG, since we would likely be done with the Baker subdivision, then we would have, you know, other ideas we could use the CDBG funds for. Also, as you know, we became a home investment partnership grantee back in 2018, and that's another federally funded program, but this program is specifically designed to exclusively construct non-luxury affordable housing for low-income households, and it also offers other variety of housing activities like rehab, down payment, tenant-based rental assistance, and so forth. So for 22-23, this would be our fourth year, but again, we don't know what that number is So we're projecting it to be what our current allocation this year, which is just over $350,000. And 10% of that can go towards administrative costs, and the other percent can go to programming. And plus, we're also rolling over funds from our previous years because we've been holding on to that money until we get to that point for the Baker subdivision to do that. And also, just to remind you, when we first got awarded home funds, we were awarded $750,000. And so our allocation has continued to decrease to the point of 350. So it'll be really curious as to what the upcoming allocation will be. Because, you know, we all knew it was a little fluky in the beginning that we got that money, but it was perfect timing because we can use it on the Baker subdivision. Also, this program requires a 25% local match. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the city allocated $250,000 of its general obligation bonds toward the infrastructure improvements, and that counts toward our local match grant. And it's kind of, it runs funny. It hasn't really counted yet, but we will show that we've invested it in this project. And so as we begin to build housing, that will then begin to show what the match is. And at some point in the future, we'll be looking at some additional matching money. But right now, I think we're good for another year or two. So it also requires that 50% of the allocation be set aside for what they call certified housing, community development housing organizations called CHODOs. We don't have any eligible CHODOs in the community right now. There's really few in the state. But hopefully at some point when we get through all of the subdivision improvements using the funds, we can look at trying to help create some CHODOs in the area. Also, again, I mentioned earlier, we're not, we don't have our 21-22 money. So, yeah. So we'll be bringing that information to you this coming month just to get ahead of when it's due. Okay. Also, we're hoping to use the funds, as I talked earlier, to construct some of the single-family housing starting along the Welch Avenue in the Baker subdivision. And we really want to, in the process of soliciting for modular proposals to build that we want to start building, and then also possibly sell some of those lots to eligible nonprofit organizations. So for this coming year, and I know I fixed this, but anyway, for 22-23, we hope to continue the construction of those once we get started. And then the whole tax credit idea, again, we'll be bringing you an update on that as well. So now, this year, we have all of our CARES money under one activity. It's funding that we got through CDBG, IDEA, and HOME. We put it all under what we called our COVID programs because they are not permanent. They're just to help during the pandemic period. And so, as you know, it became law back in 2020 in response to the pandemic. And we have been awarded different pots of money from different agencies to address the pandemic's effect on our community. And so for our CDBG program, we got just over $700,000. And through that program, we've been implementing a mortgage, rent, and utility relief assistance program where we can help people with those costs for up to 6 months. To date, we've helped approximately 162 households. And the largest assistance has been through helping people with their rent, where we spent just over $396,000. And I think we're at a really good place on this program because all the programs have a deadline on when you can spend the funds. And the main deadline is you have to have 80% of your funds spent by 2023. Well, we're way past getting our 80% spent. So now I can really concentrate on the other programs because CDBG, which is our biggest contract with HUD, was our first priority in getting that money spent. Okay. And then we also got awarded just over $600,000 of CDBG CARES funds, but this was through the Iowa Economic Development Authority. And we are just now getting ready to kick off that $600,000. I'll be bringing some ideas to you here at the end of the month, if not sooner, on how we can utilize these funds. Again, like CDBG, it has a deadline that 80% of those funds have to be expensed by a certain time frame, and then the remaining has another year or two after that. But so I'm ready to get started now that we have our CDBG CARES program, and the state is like, we're holding it for you. It's not going anywhere because they got like $21 million. And so whatever we can help them spend is great. And so I've been working on some ideas, had a big meeting with the state yesterday on how well we can utilize these funds and get funds spent in that timely manner where hopefully we can meet that 80% threshold by next year. Also, as you know, later last year, we also, the government kicked in a American Rescue Plan, was signed into law that also applies relief to address the continual impact of the COVID and the pandemic. And as part of this act, funds were allocated through cities, entitlement cities under the HOME program. So we were able to get funds under this program. And under this program, the funding is to provide housing services, shelter, experiencing homelessness, other low-income, moderate households with incomes that are 80%. This program has a lot of parts to it that we could utilize, hopefully, to impact a lot of opportunities in our community. We were awarded just over $1.2 million. And of this amount, 15% can be used for administration. And so the caveat to it is because they awarded it to us last year, we have to go back and amend this year's plan rather than adding it to the upcoming plan, which means we're doing two different plans at the same time. And I'm hoping to have the discussion where we can kind of tackle them all so they all can be submitted at the same time. But we asked why it could not just be rolled over to this year, but the answer was no. So again, we have not started that, but we're hoping to bring that to you once we finalize what we're doing for our CDBG, our IDED CARES 2 program. And then we will come to you about this plan and how we're going to address the public and get feedback on how to use these funds. And these, I think we have until September 2030 to get these funds implemented. I don't remember if there was a threshold expenditure of them at all, but a lot of cities have gotten their own separate pot of ARP money, and we not only got our own separate pot for the city of Ames, we also got it under HOME. So we really have gotten, we got a lot of money to spend. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
good.
we have a lot of money to make a difference in this community.
Yes, we do.
That's the good part.
Vanessa, does this money that has the 2030 deadline have any potential for being used to offset costs that might be associated with our climate action plan that could impact LMI individuals in the community and their homes?
It's certainly a possibility. I have to go back and reread. I went through some training early last year, and I'm just going to go back and refresh myself. And when I put the team together, we're going to talk about all the categories that are available because we want to then invite the public to say, okay, here's what we're looking at, here's what's available. And that's certainly a possibility. It's just have a variety of opportunities. I just have to look at specifically if that category exists, but I wouldn't say it wouldn't, but I can't say for yes at this time.
I assume it would be some kind of home improvement category.
Yeah. Yep, and that's certainly something we can look into.
So if the project that the multifamily project, if the multifamily project, the Prairie Fire, is it Prairie Fire? Is that their name?
Prairie Fire, yes.
Doesn't get the LIHTC credits, could ARP funds be dedicated in the same amount that they're applying for the tax credits? Could ARP funds be used? I think that wasn't a tax credits like $750,000 or something like that they're asking for.
It's less than $1 million. I don't remember the number, but it's somewhere between that and $1 million. Yeah.
And they just sell those to someone who wants to buy down their tax liability. They just take that money to buy down the project. In other words, it's just quote free money, so to speak. I'm just wondering if there's a way to try and get this multifamily thing going. And if LIHTC doesn't come through, could we take some of this money and use it in the same amount and get that project underway?
It's interesting that you brought that up, because that's just the discussion that we had the other day, because the state of Iowa has access to, was it 20 some million, something like that, of ARP money through the Treasury. And so that's what they were looking at to fund the second round of applications, was utilizing that fund. And so that's why we were hopeful that we were very close that we could get the second round if this money has been allocated for that. And that's what the state has been dealing with the Treasury Department as to what the guidelines they can use that money for. And so that is discussion that apparently the board had yesterday, that we're waiting to find out about for hopefully by tomorrow. And that's why we'll be bringing that to you here this month, because we're anxious to know if that will be the case as well.
I just hate to see them, if they don't get the tax credits again, then we're just basically back to square one. We're not moving anywhere. And that's what I'm just trying to think, how can we juice this? How can we prime this pump and get it going? And this would seem to be a great opportunity, because it's not like you said, it's less than $1 million that they're looking for the LIHTC credits. But anyway, just food for thought.
I think when we bring you that information, it'll, yeah, we've been just kind of like holding our breath, like, okay, hopefully this is going to work.
Yep.
If not, what's our plan A, B, what's our plan B? And that's what we're going to be bringing to you for your feedback on. Now that we know what the answer is, how do you want to move forward?
Vanessa, do you have a sense of what happened in the first round? How is it we fell short in that application?
Well, the number of projects that got funded were basically for homelessness, and they scored way more. Plus, they also then took a huge part of their allocation for those areas hard hit by derecho. And so a lot of those projects ended up on Eastern Iowa, Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, and that took up all of the money for those types of projects on that side, because they decided that needed to be a priority to get housing that was lost and damaged from the derecho.
Thanks.
I mean, we did get a score that was very close to what we projected to get when we partnered with Prairie Fire. You just don't know what anybody else's applications are. So we didn't know for sure we would get funded. We got pretty much the score we thought we would get. And then, as Vanessa just explained, the game was a little different by the time we got to scoring after the derecho.
But we are I think we're in the top 5 of that next tier.
So based on what we understood in our last conference call, if the state chooses to do what was explained to us, we would get it. We're like 3rd on the list, something like that. But we don't know if they're going to do that.
No, we don't know
To
yet.
the mayor's comment from our conference call this week, LIHTC's never as simple as it's about $750,000 of tax credits. There's a lot of other moving parts. So it'll be interesting to see what we come back with if they don't have the extra money. It's probably not as simple as a $750,000 check.
Stay tuned. Okay, now we're coming to the end here where we want to always stop and thank our staff. And first, I'll start with our housing division. You know, housing is our name. And without Andrea and Deb, I don't know how we would have got through implementing of our CARES program. And they're helping with our home buyer program and whatever programs that I need. And so, and they came out of retirement. And so they were able to hit the ground running because they used to work for me for the Section 8 program and other CDBG. And so I'm very grateful for them that housing is still a big part of their heart. And so, yes, it's our name, and providing services to the public is our game. And so we're on it. We're going to continue to do our CARES program. Like I said, we're looking at the CARES 2 money. We're also looking at doing our home buyer program and all other programs that we need to do as part of the grant fundings that we receive. And so, again, I'm very thankful for the support of them to help work on these projects, because I would not be able to do what I need to do without them. Also, we also want to say thank you for our planning staff. You know, every year I have to come up with these pictures of what we're doing now. So this year, we're designing planning services. You see they're really busy working at designing planning services.
They never do that.
To deliver the right fit. So whether it's neighborhoods, historic preservation, zoning, floodplain development, Eloise, Justin, Ray, Julie, and Benjamin are on the job. And Kelly never gets to see what it is until tonight.
I never
He never knows what we're going to be doing. So
They get
we
that
want
shape with those triangles they were using.
Very
That's amazing.
skilled.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing.
Very skilled.
So anyway, that's the end of our presentation. And if you have any other questions, we just want to thank you for your time and attention, and always your support for the planning and housing divisions. We couldn't do what we do without you. And so we say thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Vanessa or Kelly? Thanks, Vanessa. Thanks, Kelly. Welcome.
Okay. So I want to thank you for taking the time for the past 3 days. I always look forward to this because it's an opportunity to bring before you our executive leadership team. I'm pretty proud of all the accomplishments that they have made over the past year. And I think you should be proud of the quality of those individuals too. But I can assure you, behind each one of them, there are many, many others of city employees who are dedicated and very talented. They work every day to provide exceptional customer service at the best price to our citizens. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a lot about it. A budget is more about money. It's really an administrative plan. It's the service plan we intend to provide for our citizens. That's really kind of the bottom line for our citizens. Now, the fun part's over. Starting next Tuesday, the work begins for you. So I want to pass out a reminder what you're going to have to make decisions on for next week, okay? Not tonight. I want you to be thinking about all this now. Because on Tuesday, February 8th, we hope it's the wrap-up. We hope you can make final decisions. Actually, the budget, we take to hearing. Remember, we don't want to have to make any adjustments after that. Nancy and Dwayne get very upset. If you move a dollar around, they've got a lot of pages to change.
Thank you.
So probably what we'll be asking you to do, and you've seen this format before, we're going to start with the CIP. Now, I put 1A in there, but I'm cautious about it. I'm not suggesting we have any amendments to it. There's an art to the CIP. If you want to put a lot of money into geo bonds of some big project in the first year, we're going to have to scramble because the art is trying to level that debt service to the citizens. Likewise, some of the other funds might be hampered. Of course, if you do anything in the first year, that's even more impactful because that's included in our budget balance right now. So I'm not asking for any changes in there, but if you have any amendments, you would bring those up first. But most importantly, it's you'd vote on the approval of the 5-year plan. That's the first thing, okay? When you do that, you're going to lock in those CIP projects in the first year into the budget. Then we're going to move on to the current budget, right? Fiscal year 21-22. So we have adopted levels We have now what we are estimating to be the adjusted amount. We've given you that in the budget. You may have some changes you want there. We may have some changes too as we add some of these things you're going to vote on. I may recommend that you, remember, I might recommend you put it in this year, the adjusted, rather than next year. So revenues equal expenditures for next year. The one area we're going to have to move in, we've just been working with transit, and that's that transfer from the student trust fund into transit operations. Remember, we told you we're going to draw that down, and that's one of the reasons next year we're not charging the we're not charging the students to support SIRIDE. They're going to they are going to pay. I don't want you to think they're not paying, because that money will go in to replenish the transit fund, their fund, their trust fund, excuse me. So we'll deal with the adjusted budget, the amendment budget for 21-22. And then you see my recommended budget, and we have numbers plugged in there already, remember? But we're going to have final decisions regarding CODA. And you should have that information from Brian. I want to make sure you have that data for you to contemplate over the weekend. And there'll be a presentation on each one of these too. Okay, I don't want you to think you're just going to make a decision. We'll have the individual groups giving a presentation. So we have CODA, asset funding. Deb, do you want to mention something on your memo? Did you hand the memo out? Oh, here we go.
So at your seats, you have the memo that went out on Friday. And the only thing that was added to it is on page 5. And those are the options for the unallocated city funds. And the amount of that. Yeah, it's 11,652. The asset board or asset volunteers are recommending that those be set aside for housing services. But I wanted to outline options for you to consider for next Tuesday. And that's the only thing that's changed.
Okay.
Deb, how are we going to handle the bridge home and the potential reserving versus where do we stand on that?
Yep. So starting on the bottom of page 3, that's where I talk about the Bridge Homes request and what the asset volunteers are recommending. And they are recommending to sequester all of the funding for the Bridge Home until we've had a chance to review the responses to the questions and follow up with further questions and concerns.
So would that be part and parcel of the motion, or
That would be
how are we going to
separate.
handle that in terms
Yeah,
of?
there'll be 2 separate motions.
Okay.
One to sequester the funds, and then one to decide on what you want to do with the unallocated funds.
Okay, thank you.
So just to clarify, I'm also a little confused on Bridge Home. So am I correct in saying that we have the issue of current funding and sequestering dollars that have been allocated? No?
No,
This is sequestering future dollars.
Yep, dollars as
For
of July
22,
1st.
23.
Okay.
And I did have that question from the Bridge Home, and I clarified that with them. This sequestering is just for fiscal year 23 funds. It's not impacting the current year funds.
And it was felt that there was adequate time to get points clarified prior to July 1 of this year to try and get that cleared up. And that's why we didn't say not fund. It was just sequester them at this time until the questions that have been raised have been answered.
Correct.
And I still have some sticker shock too, as far as the amount of the increase. And the asset volunteers are recommending total allocation of $245,000 for a 26% increase over the current year allocation. I don't remember when we've ever seen an increase of that size. So do we talk about that next Tuesday?
You have specific questions you want, or you want to know the rationale from the asset group or something?
Yes.
Will they be prepared to explain that, I guess, Deb?
Yeah, I will have city asset volunteers here, and I will be able to assist them.
Now, I don't know if the council also has interest in this, but I certainly do. If we're going to make an increase of that size, and the community has a right to know why we're increasing. I mean, that's a huge increase.
I mean, if you look at NAMI's, it's 161%, so 26 isn't that huge.
So we struggle with this. It's a percentage, but you also have to look at the dollar amount. So this is like a CODA. There was a significant percentage increase, but it was a relatively small amount of money. This is a $548,000 increase. So it's percentage, but you also look at the actual dollar amount. So at least I would like to have a better understanding of that before I can support it.
But it's not a 548,000, it's a 245.
Right, yeah, that's
68.
what they requested.
Yeah, their request
They
was.
requested.
I understand that, but I can read this. I understand what the asset volunteers are recommending, but Bridgehome came to asset asking for $548,000 increase, and so I'd like to understand all this.
Okay. As far as public art, we plug in $46,000 in the budget, and that's what's being recommended. So there's really no discrepancy there as far as what the group wants and what we budgeted. Outside funding, you increased that substantially, if you remember. So I think we could satisfy most of the requests. That's going through the process. Brian has you've outlined, Brian administers, and you've outlined or laid out specific criteria to meet. So we've got that laid out for you. We also have the downtown parking waivers. That's built in the budget. Remember when they do certain projects downtown, we're actually going to reimburse the parking fund for lost revenue. That's built into the budget. And we have the AEDC workforce funding we normally do. Remember, we're building that in. That comes out of hotel motel tax. All right. Now, the other outside funding request you have that you're going to have to make decisions on that I've heard of, so maybe you all have heard of so far, is a request for $49,552 from Home Allies. Remember that? I'm not saying you're going to vote on it or not, or how you're going to vote on it, but we'll have to be prepared to tell you how to pay for it if you do vote on it. We had a request from the Ames Historical Museum for $150,000. Remember that? We're going to have to help you. If you decide to vote on it, you'll, if I know there's going to be an affirmative vote, majority vote, we'll help you determine how to finance it. Main Street for $68,600 for a variety of, I think they're public improvements. So I think what's here is they're really allocating funds for Public Works Department to take on to accomplish during the next year, if I read that right. We'll help you there. I think Gloria already mentioned to the group about increasing the art funding, the grants for $30,000. I think you all heard about that, correct? I'm not advocating either way. I'm just telling you I'll be prepared to show you how to pay for that. I don't know, Gloria, did you mention the airport to everybody?
I
don't know if
haven't,
just
no, I
came to me.
haven't, because I was waiting for your
I'm
email.
trying to get back. I'm trying to find.
Damien?
It seems like a lot of money for that. I don't think we can accomplish without that. So I
Yeah, I didn't know,
don't
and I
want to
hadn't
scare
heard from
everybody.
you,
It's not that
so,
much. Yeah, I know.
no.
Maybe I'll know more next week. Okay.
Yeah, I have not sent the email out to council yet because I didn't know what
You might
the,
want to send out the topic anyway. And
okay.
I
Well, I
don't know the
can, I
dollar
will
amount.
mention that during council comments.
All right. And then the only other one I believe that I want to mention to you, one of the things I believe we dropped in the previous goals of the council was to set up the one app where we could do centralize everything. We're trying to show you that it's very difficult to get one app. We wanted to upgrade the website. And Susan, I forget what it's called. Susan there? Oh.
No.
It's the newer websites are able to handle the format for mobile. And
Here she is.
I think if you want to do that, we don't have any. If you want to do that, we're going to need money to accomplish that. Now, the good part is we had previously put $125,000 to hire a consultant to analyze whether we wanted to move to a private internet service, a public internet service. Remember that? We've carried that forward and we haven't used that yet. I think we've dropped that. I'm interpreting the council. We've dropped that particular initiative, but I could use that money to Susan to work with. We'll go out for bids and have a consultant come in and redesign our website to make it more friendly to cell phones. We'll have a lot of ability to click on and link to all of our other softwares. So as you move easily to our site, you'll be able to move into whether it's permits, submitting planning and zoning stuff, all those other, softwares we have. We can perhaps link to all those. So I don't need any money on that, but I may need later on, or maybe Tuesday, authorization to move the money into a website update. If you want to do that, if you prefer to do that. Okay, it's no extra money. Probably won't even cost the same amount. I think I've got all that I've heard from council, right? Again, I would like for you to call me if you have other ones you're going to bring up, because I don't want to be surprised, because it does throw the budget off and a lot of money's got to be moved around. A lot of numbers have to be changed. We'll help you do it. Just don't want to try to do it that night on Tuesday night before you vote on it. But I think I've got what I've heard before that people want to maybe talk about, right? The items to be prepared for. Well, any others?
No, those are the only ones I have.
Is there any other information you want from city staff before Tuesday? Or you can call me and we'll try to prepare it for you.
Anything else come to mind?
Remember, we have a regular council meeting following that. We're trying to keep it sort of brief because it'll be a pretty stressful night for you. We always know that it's a longer night. So we'll try to keep the regular council meeting as short as possible. That will follow. Wait, anything else?
No.
Anything else? All right. We appreciate your attention and hope you and the public learned a lot about all the things we do. We don't. Many times people only focus on sort of the high visibility type of services, but there's a lot of stuff that goes behind the scenes that you never see. People are working hard to deliver a lot of the services to our community. So we want to thank everybody who works for the city of Ames for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne, Nancy, and Steve. Outstanding. Once again, I was commenting to my wife this morning how much I learn every year and what great staff we have and what great programs, and just never ceases to amaze me. All right, moving on. We do not have any communications to council, so we'll go to council comments. Gloria, we'll start with you tonight.
First of all, I'd just like to say how much I always appreciate the budget overviews and hearing from all the departments, because I just am so impressed every year with how much we accomplish and how excellent the staff is at delivering services to our residents. The other thing that Steve alluded to is that I was asking Steve about the potential for renaming the Ames Municipal Airport after J. Herman Banning, who is an African-American pilot from Ames, who was the first in the nation to receive first black man in the nation to receive a commercial pilot's license. And this has been brought up to me by other people, and I wanted to know from Steve, and Steve was going to check with Damien on what that entails if council was interested in pursuing it. And at this point, I don't know what that costs. There are costs in new signage there, and I believe that there is some sort of charge with the FAA to actually change maps. And so it can be an expensive project, and you can't use FAA funding to accomplish that, as I understand it. But this is what we're trying to find out from Damien, and so there's...
He's trying to get an answer with FAA. We're not really sure. We're checking with Dubuque. I think Dubuque did something. They may have just changed the name. They named the terminal.
The terminal, yeah.
Not the airport itself, which might be another option. And the signage there obviously won't be as expensive. So it's not that you're taking action on Tuesday night to follow through. It's just
right.
We need money to do it. You want to make sure there's money in the budget. But I'm trying to get a number, and I'm trying to find out from the FAA, but they're not as responsive as we like. But.
Well, and so what I asked Steve about was, can he find this out? But otherwise, the only number that I have is what I have seen in news reports from Dubuque when they were initially voting on it, and that was approximately $100,000 for everything associated with their project. Now, some of their project was a memorial, and so I don't know how much this costs, but I know there are hidden costs because of the renaming on maps and on signage, so.
Well, Jack, you have the, Jack Trice Field. Their option would be is if you had called the airfield, banning airfield instead of trying to change the airport and avoid all the FAA and the other things and
So that's what I'm thinking.
still
We could
publicize it.
Name the terminal too and avoid, we're trying to find and avoid the FAA costs and all that too.
Well, I'm
It's
just
fine.
concerned that it seems somewhat unofficial and it doesn't look quite as much like we're committed to the renaming, which would elevate one of the African-American members of our historical community here. So I would prefer the official, but this isn't the time to discuss it. I don't have enough information from Steve. And so, when I get information, or when Steve gets information, I'm sure he'll tell all of us what that information is.
I would also just encourage council to be thinking about, we don't really appear to much have policy in terms of, we had a request in terms of, naming the bridge, for Celia. And the point is that if we start naming other facilities, what's the policy, what's the criteria? And so it would just seem prudent for council to, if you do set money aside, before you do that, is really talk about it. I'm not talking down on
Sure.
trying to discourage that, but all of a sudden
Is
you
the
could have all
policy
kinds
we
of
currently have just for parks.
Yeah.
I can share that with you if you don't remember how we do.
No.
I remember.
Yeah.
It's a good starting point. Whether it applies.
Yeah.
to-
Yeah,
And so
it's-
it would be
It's
just
similar.
copy paste that.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you could follow that.
Yeah.
almost verbatim.
it just might make it easier for council to say, okay, we're going to push this
Use
through
this
the
policy
through this
to-
policy.
yeah.
If it doesn't meet the
Yep.
policy, it's just done, and then we're not trying to make emotional decisions
Sure.
or ones where someone really wants to push something that's not really.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
I mean not council, I mean a person in the public. So okay, anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Great, thank you.
Nothing tonight.
Nita?
I just want to say too how amazing it was. So thank you and thank all the staff for their hard work. I learned a lot again.
Nothing for me.
Nothing tonight.
Nothing for me.
I'm good too. All right, thank you everybody. Entertain motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Second.
All right, those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.